Jared asked, losing his playful tone. You really want to know? Please tell us, Tamara said sarcastically. Because you keep pushing guys like us aside, he said, pointing to Eric Miller, who was writing in a notebook. Eric is one of the nicest guys ever, Jared continued. Did you know he's a published poet? But of course you don't know because he doesn't fit your idea of a nice guy. You ignore him because he doesn't look like those popular guys. Jared then pointed to Clifton, another boy who was also not very popular. Clifton is going to USC on a full scholarship and has excellent grades. But I heard how you laughed when he asked you to the dance, Rochelle. You chose Tommy instead. How's that working out for you now? Rochelle looked upset and quickly left the room. That's enough, Mr. Broussard, Anita Sanchez warned him. Go ahead, give me detention, Jared said defiantly. You know that's what they call you behind your back, right? These stuck-up girls act like they are your friends when you are around, but as soon as you turn away, they make fun of you. Amid the shouting of, that's not true and you're so rude, Jared kept going. Jack asked you out, didn't he, April? Why didn't you go with him? Oh, right, because you were with Chad. And where is Chad now? Oh, that's right, he's dating Sandra. Even after you did that for him, I wonder why you can't find a guy who treats you well. April looked shocked as some people in the library turned to look at her. Then she started to cry. Why can't I find a nice guy? Let me tell you why, Jared shouted in the quiet room. Because you're too full of yourself to see the good guys right in front of you. He picked up his books. You know what? You all deserve what you get. You deserve to be treated poorly. You bring it on yourselves. Yeah, I'll see you all at detention, Jared said, and left the library. 3 hours later, Jared entered Mr. Cousins' room. The science teacher looked up, a puzzled smile on his face. Did you need to see me, Mr. Broussard? He asked quietly as other students came in for their 1-hour detentions. Yeah, I thought Miss Sanchez sent a note? Jared asked. No, I didn't see anything, Mr. Cousins replied, looking through the stack of notes from other teachers. All right then, Jared smiled. You're such a jerk, Leslie Webb, one of the cheerleaders, said as they walked past each other. Just leave me alone, Leslie, Jared replied sharply. I'm not a mean person, Leslie shouted and pushed Jared. What? Jared pretended to be shocked by her reaction. Miss Webb, putting your hands on another student, Mr. Cousins said, already writing a note for Leslie. But he called me, Leslie said, tears rolling down her face. Really? Are we in elementary school? Come on now, Mr. Cousins replied. I just called her Leslie, but I guess that is an awful thing to say, Jared smiled. Oh, that's not fair, Leslie shot back. Jared just made it onto the bus just before it pulled away from the school. He was relieved. Otherwise, he would have had to walk 2.5 miles from Baylor Lake High School to his small home in Baylor Lake, Louisiana. His mother, Belinda Broussard, welcomed him as he walked in. Why aren't the girls all over you? She asked, lovingly brushing her hand through his thick hair. They must be kept busy by their helpers, Jared joked. I got a letter from Votech, she said. Oh, I hope, Jared said as he tore open the letter. Yes, he shouted a moment later. I'm in welding class. I passed the test. I'm going to be a welder. The next day, Jared took a deep breath and walked over to Leslie as she was putting her lunch bag in her locker. Leslie, listen, I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have said that. Yes, you shouldn't, she yelled at him and walked away. Because of you, I got another detention. If I get one more, I'll be suspended. Jared then went to Mr. Cousins and explained what really happened, why Leslie reacted as she did. But she had no reason to treat you that way, Mr. Cousins pointed out. But she was upset, Jared argued. All right, Mr. Broussard, I will cancel this detention, the teacher said. When Leslie arrived for her detention, she was surprised to hear Mr. Cousins say there was no detention. Mr. Broussard explained what happened, he said as more students came in for their detentions. Leslie called her best friend April to share the news. April then told Tammy Hale, who thought about it for a moment. If it had been her, either Chad or Billy would have made sure Tammy got another detention. With graduation so close, all the assignments and tests piling up, a suspension could be really bad for anyone with a C-, and Billy would have enjoyed watching Tammy scramble. Before most of the cheerleading group sat down for dinner that evening, they all knew what Jared had done. He had stood up for one of them and done the right thing. "But he's still a jerk," Tammy whispered to Rochelle. "What was that about in the library?" Tammy spoke for almost 3 minutes before she realized they had lost the connection. She called Rochelle back, but it went to voicemail. "Ha ha!" Tammy laughed into the phone. "I was just talking and didn't realize we weren't even connected. Guess you're doing the same thing. Call me back. Love you." Rochelle had stopped talking. She had closed her phone, ending the call. She wiped away a tear. She had been so happy. She had even sung out loud when she saw the little positive sign on the test. A baby. A beautiful little baby. If it was a girl, they could play together, dress up, and go to ballet classes. If it was a boy, he would be strong and kind, just like Tommy. They would name their son Trey because Tommy's full name was Thomas Huval Jr., and Trey would be Thomas Huval III. Tommy would show Trey how to throw a ball, and they would be her two strong boys. "It's not mine," Tommy had said, his face showing his anger. When he finally admitted the baby was his, he insisted she should not have the baby. "What? Tommy?" Rochelle cried, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this?" The blow to her face had left her dazed, but the kick had made her faint. When she woke up, she was at the University Medical Center in Lafayette, Louisiana. The police had asked Tommy Huval Jr. about Rochelle's injuries and what had happened. He said he didn't know. They had been at a party, had a fight, and she left angrily. What happened after that was a mystery to him, too. "But you need to catch who hurt her," he said, tears falling from his handsome face. Rochelle did end her relationship with Tommy, but he begged her to come back. He apologized. He promised he would change. Eventually, she forgave him, but their attempts to get back together weren't as magical as she hoped. He left right after, saying he was going out with his friends. Now, just 3 weeks before their graduation, Rochelle wiped away more tears. She would have been 7 or 8 months pregnant if Tommy had not caused her to lose the baby. She imagined the baby kicking inside her, and they would have been choosing names if the results had shown it to be a girl. Gloria. That was Nana's name, Rochelle remembered, her heart heavy for her loving grandmother. Graduation day came, and everyone went to the celebrations, promising to stay in touch and be friends forever. Almost no one noticed that Eric Miller, Jared Broussard, Clifton, Jack, or Barry were absent from the gatherings. A few parents did notice, though. "Tammy, you invited Clifton Abrams, right?" Mrs. Hale asked her daughter. "He gave such a great speech." "Clifton? No way, I wouldn't invite him," Tammy scoffed. "Not invite him?" Her mother chuckled derisively. "Tammy, he's got a full scholarship to USC, and where is Mikey going? Oh, that's right, he isn't." Summer went on, and those who had plans for college began to leave slowly. The ones without plans tried to find jobs, but faced stiff competition from other recent graduates, college grads, and even some seasoned workers looking for work. The job market in 2009 was tough. Jared worked hard and studied diligently, eventually landing a job at an oil field company. He planned to study underwater welding, a challenging job that required scuba diving skills and special welding techniques. But it was a job in high demand on the oil rigs, and he always had work available. Jared had just returned from a few weeks at work when his mother handed him a note. "Call Leslie Webb," it said. He did, and Leslie was excited. She talked quickly about old classmates and stories Jared didn't care about. Finally, he interrupted her. Leslie, why are you telling me all this?" he asked. "Jared, I didn't raise you to speak like that," his mother called out. "Sorry, I just got in and I'm really tired." "If you have a point, please get to it," Jared said with a sigh, avoiding his mother's disapproving look. "Well, Tammy is having a party tomorrow, just hanging out, and—" Leslie continued, not finishing her thought. Jared made a hurry-up gesture but stayed quiet. "So, do you want to go?" Leslie asked. "What? Why?" Jared was honestly confused. Leslie gave a reason that didn't make much sense, and Jared, surprising himself, said, "Sure, I can pick you up at 8 or 8:30. I was thinking about that Mexican place in Bender Manny's. They have the best salsa," Leslie said. "Sounds great. I'll pick you up at 7 then." Jared let his mother scold him for being rude on the phone, but she was happy to see him going out. "Oh, your first date!" she exclaimed. "Mom, what about Denise LeBlanc?" he reminded her. "Oh, what happened to her?" Belinda asked. "She was such a nice girl." "She took her own life," Jared said softly. He got dressed in his usual blue jeans and shirt, but his mother insisted he change into a nicer shirt and khakis. Clay Webb looked at Jared and frowned. He was neatly dressed with no scruffy beard or tattoos, but he didn't seem cool enough for Leslie. "Daddy!" Leslie called out. As they talked for a short while, Clay watched Jared with disapproval. Here was a young man living at home. He had a job, so why was he driving an old car instead of something better? "Bye," Leslie said, taking Jared's hand and leading him away. "We won't see him again," Clay told Darlene. "Leslie needs a strong man, not someone she can easily push around. Did you see how he let her pull them out of here? He needs to be stronger." Darlene shook her head and held back her words. Clay was just like Leslie's other boyfriends, Tommy, Mikey, Charlie. Clayton George Webb had been stuck in the past for nearly 20 years, forgetting he was no longer in high school. The only money they had came from Darlene's inheritance. If her father hadn't been careful with it, Clay would have spent it all. "What's wrong?" Clay asked when Darlene didn't answer. "Is it bad for a dad to want the best for his daughter?" "That's all my dad wanted," Darlene replied. "Well, now you have me," Clay said, feeling proud of himself. "Sure," Darlene said. While Darlene wondered why she had ever liked Clay or let him influence her life, Leslie was happily chatting away as Jared drove them to Manny's. His amusement mixed with confusion. Jared had asked Leslie out in high school once, back when he first got his driver's license and was excited about his uncle's old car. Leslie had laughed and told him that even if he were the last guy on Earth, she wouldn't date him. He noticed her outfit. His mom had made him wear nice clothes, but Leslie wore shorts, a simple top, and flip-flops. Leslie was thrilled when they arrived at Manny's. Charlie or Mikey would sometimes say they would go, only to change plans at the last minute to places she didn't like. Jared opened the car door for her and held the restaurant door open. He let her order first and even shared his water when the spicy salsa made her throat burn. "So, Leslie?" Jared finally said, interrupting her excitement. "Yeah?" She smiled, tossing her long brown hair back. "Not to be awkward, but last time I asked you out, you said you wouldn't date me even if I were the last man on Earth," Jared reminded her. Her smile faded as she looked down at the table, then she looked back up. "Yeah, well, I was wrong for saying that," she admitted. She took his hands in hers, noticing how rough they felt. "Wow, your hands are rough," she said. "Comes with the job. I wear gloves, but it happens," he shrugged. "You remember when you talked to Cousins for me? You said I didn't deserve that detention?" Leslie asked. "Yeah?" Jared replied, not really recalling that moment. "Well, Billy, I would have made sure you got another detention, would have made sure you got that suspension," Leslie said. "And it took you almost 2 years to say thank you?" Jared asked as she traced his palm with her finger. "Yeah," she admitted. When they arrived at Tammy's house, Leslie's cheerful mood returned. In high school, Jared Broussard didn't have much in common with the popular crowd. 2 years later, things hadn't changed much. Tommy and Charlie were loudly bragging about their strength, while Billy showed Chad, Mikey, and Richie his latest tattoo. The girls went into Tammy's room to share laughs and gossip. "Broussard, how much can you lift?" Chad mocked. "Don't know, never tried," Jared replied honestly. "Think Wayne still has his weights in the garage," Richie, Tammy's current boyfriend, suggested. "I bet I can lift 100 pounds more than you and do twice as many," Tommy challenged. Jared shrugged. He was still thin, but he did carry his welding gear and scuba equipment around. Tommy seemed a bit softer than he did in high school, with a belly that hung over his belt. "Okay, let's say I lift 100 pounds, 20 times, Jared clarified. "You're saying you'll lift 200 pounds 40 times, right?" "Right," Tommy sneered. The girls came out of the bedroom and headed toward the garage. Jared showed them a $100 bill, and Tommy had to borrow and beg to put together his $100. Jared said, testing the 100-pound weight. "Let's add another 100, okay?" Tommy started to sweat as Jared easily lifted the 200 pounds, doing 25 reps quickly. Leslie hugged Jared, bouncing with excitement. Jared smiled at her, and she kissed him gently on the lips. Jared found it amusing. In high school, Leslie didn't pay much attention to him, but now she was clinging to him. He briefly wondered if being the only guy in the crowded, warm garage with a job had anything to do with her attention. Tommy was worried. He had lifted 300 pounds before. He even managed 325, but that was over a year ago, and he barely managed 10 reps then. Rochelle's worried face annoyed Tommy. True, $43 of his $100 was hers, and she complained it would take another 2 weeks for her to get more. Chad and Billy's smirks also frustrated him. They were hoping he would lose, looking forward to having something to tease him about. Chad especially wanted to show Rochelle what a failure her boyfriend was. He had even said on several occasions that he was interested in Rochelle. Good luck with that, Tommy had chuckled in response. Tommy grunted as he pushed the weights, his muscles straining. Billy was there, ready to help if needed. After 8 reps, Billy had to step in and guide the bar back into place. Rochelle, looking frustrated, stormed out of the garage, and shortly after they heard the front door slam shut. "How many can you do, huh?" Tommy asked, panting, while Billy laughed at him. "More than you, for sure," Billy replied with a grin. The party atmosphere was tense, with people teasing and mocking each other. Chad and Billy especially enjoyed picking on Tommy, bringing up how Jared had embarrassed him earlier. "Man, Jared made you look bad right in front of Rochelle," Chad taunted. "Where'd she go anyway?" "She left after Jared got the better of you," Billy added. "Why don't you go talk to him about it?" Jared, sitting off to the side, felt detached from the group. He remembered how back in high school he used to wish to be part of this crowd, hanging out with the popular kids, sharing stories. Now, it all felt pointless. The conversations were childish, filled with empty boasts and immature jokes. None of them had much going on in life. Richie was working a low-paying job, and Chad had lost his job at the gas station. Tommy and the others didn't seem to be doing much better. Jared, having gone to a technical school and now working on the rigs, had moved on from the dreams he once had. It was clear that he no longer fit into their world. Even the girls he had once admired, Tammy, April, Leslie, now seemed shallow to him. Leslie, who had stayed by his side during the party, smiled at him. "Guess you're still on rig time, huh?" she said softly. "Yeah," Jared replied, nodding. He had kept to himself, nursing a single beer while the others drank like they were in a race. Tommy, now fully drunk, tried to provoke Jared, but he ignored the comments and stayed calm. Later, as they sat in Jared's car, Leslie leaned over and made a playful comment about how they could have gotten a hotel room if he had taken some money earlier. Jared laughed it off, not really caring. In the end, losing his innocence, both in terms of the crowd he once idolized and the relationships he imagined, wasn't as meaningful as he had once thought it would be. Reality had set in, and the magic he had hoped for just wasn't there. Leslie must have felt a rush of joy. She gasped and trembled in delight. "And wow, you're much bigger than I expected," she complimented before she wanted to try again. They went on a few more dates before Leslie ended things with, "It's not you, it's me." But losing her wasn't as hard for Jared as he thought it would be. He had enjoyed learning how to share affection and how to make a woman feel good. He found pleasure in their time together and appreciated the sounds of her enjoyment. Jared came to realize that intimacy was the only thing they really had in common. He had a career and often talked about his work in the field. Leslie, on the other hand, often chatted about the shows she watched on television. When he returned to his mom's house after a few weeks away, she handed him a piece of paper. "Call Rochelle L. Esposito," she had written. "It's Rochelle, Mom," Jared chuckled. "Rochelle!" "Oh," his mom laughed. Rochelle had learned, shortly after their gathering, that Jared had declined the money he had won. She immediately called Tommy. "Hey, where's my $43? She asked sharply. "Huh? Oh, right," Tommy replied. "I mean, I lost it, you know." Rochelle bitterly said that Jared had not accepted the cash. Tommy then made a weak excuse about what happened to her money. "You owe me $43, she shot back. Usually, Tommy could charm her into letting things go, but this time, Rochelle was firm, insisting he pay her back. Almost 3 weeks later, he finally gave her the money, but by then, she told him she was done with him, tired of his lack of ambition, and ended their relationship. One day, a strange number called, and Rochelle answered carefully. "Hello?" she said. Tommy had been using different phones to reach her. Leslie was more than happy to date Tommy, but she had less money than he did. Tommy soon realized how much he missed Rochelle. "Hey, Rochelle, it's Jared. My mom said you called," Jared said. "Oh, hi, how's it going?" Rochelle replied. They set up a plan to meet at Cowboy's Barbecue, then head to a movie theater in LG, Louisiana. "Okay, I'll pick you up at 6:30. Do you still live on Magnolia Way?" Jared asked. "Yeah," Rochelle answered, surprised Jared knew where she was. That date led to more, and then Jared had to leave for work again. Tommy tried to win Rochelle back, but she firmly told him to stop trying. Belinda's note made her mother and son laugh. Rochelle was in class when she got a call, so she returned it almost an hour later. She and Jared decided to meet the next evening, as she had work that night at Taco Bell. Jared met Rochelle's parents, Francis and Connie Esposito. They both agreed that Jared was much better than Thomas Huval Jr. Jared and Rochelle went to Sweet Peas for fried catfish. When Jared opened the car door for Rochelle, she leaned in close to him. "Have you ever been to Huval's Levee?" she asked. "No," Jared replied. "You know," Rochelle started. "A little high school nostalgia, huh?" Jared said. "Why don't we just go to the Acadiana instead?" The motel room they chose was simple and clean, with a basic bed and pillows. They were not interested in the room's looks or comforts. It simply offered more space than Rochelle's car, which had been totaled in an accident earlier that year. Jared kissed Rochelle softly as he helped her out of her blouse. He looked at her for a moment, then smiled and kissed her again. As they took off a few pieces of clothing, Jared admired Rochelle and kissed her again each time. Then it was Jared's turn to change. When he took off his briefs, Rochelle giggled softly. Feeling embarrassed, Jared quickly reached to put his briefs back on. No, I wasn't laughing at you," Rochelle quickly reassured him. She held his hands tightly. "No, sweetie, please don't," she said, kissing him gently. "It was just funny because of Tommy. He always acts like he's so impressive," Rochelle explained, moving her hips playfully. She kissed him again, smiling. "But when I see you, you're just as good as he is," Rochelle said with a grin. They fell onto the bed and kissed deeply. Rochelle noticed some differences between Tommy and Jared. Jared was more gentle and caring, appreciating her in a way that felt warm and kind, unlike Tommy's more harsh comments, as if Tommy had any room to talk at all. Jared had gained some weight since graduating, going up from a 30 to a 34-inch waist. He didn't say anything bad about Rochelle, but Tommy had complained, saying some unpleasant things about her. Jared and Rochelle spent time together, and while their relationship had its intimate moments, Jared always made sure to be respectful and gentle. He cared about making her feel comfortable and happy. Over time, they got closer, and their bond deepened. But Jared couldn't help but feel like something was missing outside of their physical connection. They checked into a motel a few times, spending time together away from distractions. Jared was always patient, making sure Rochelle felt safe and relaxed. He introduced new things slowly, ensuring she was comfortable with everything. Despite their closeness, Jared sometimes felt uncertain about their future together. As their relationship progressed, Jared realized that while Rochelle was beautiful and they had chemistry, they didn't share much beyond their time together. She was in college and seemed to think that gave her an edge, though Jared was doing well for himself with his job. He started wondering if their relationship would last, feeling like they didn't have enough in common to build something more meaningful. Despite the good times, Jared often found himself waiting for the moment when things would change, expecting Rochelle to say they needed to slow down or see other people. Though they enjoyed each other's company, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was missing. Rochelle continued to spend time with her friends Tammy, Tamara, April, and Leslie. This also meant she saw Chad, Richie, Billy, and her ex-boyfriend Tommy. Jared didn't think Rochelle should completely cut ties with her friends, but he found it strange that she was comfortable being around someone who had not treated her well, had cheated on her more than once, taken money from her, and had hurt her before. When he got back home from a long job that lasted longer than expected, he noticed a note from his mother. It said to call Rochelle. He had just spent over 3 weeks working on different rigs. The last one had been really scary. He had come face to face with a bull shark. In his fear, he had used his welding tool to keep it at bay while he quickly finished his work. "Last time I was down there, I had hammerhead sharks all around," another welder said. "But bull sharks aren't a big deal. They can still hurt you," Jared replied. In his mother's kitchen now, he smiled. He knew his mother didn't think too highly of Rochelle, calling her Roach El Esposito when she wasn't around. When Jared called Rochelle, she said, "Hey, we need to talk." Jared felt a mix of relief and worry, glad they would finally talk. "Sure, when and where?" he asked. "I guess you can come over," Rochelle replied. "My parents will be home around 6, is that okay?" "Sounds good," Jared said. Belinda, his mom, was watching her favorite show. Jared waited for a commercial to tell her he was going to see Rochelle that evening. "Sounds like she might want to end things," he admitted. "Oh," Belinda replied. "That's too bad." "Yeah, I kind of thought it might happen," Jared said. "Why do you think that?" Belinda asked. After showering, taking a short nap, and putting on gray pants and a black sweater, Jared kissed his mom goodbye and drove to Rochelle's house. When he arrived, Rochelle said, "I'm pregnant." Jared was speechless. "What do you have to say about that?" Rochelle's father, Francis, asked. "That's a big responsibility," Jared finally replied. "Exactly," Francis said, clearly upset. "So what are you thinking?" Rochelle asked, looking into his eyes. They got married on a windy January day with all their friends there to celebrate. The girls all squealed and complained that it wasn't fair. Rochelle was the first to get married. The boys laughed and made fun of Tommy, saying his girlfriend was marrying someone else. At the small reception, Belinda called Rochelle Mrs. Broussard, and Rochelle quickly corrected her. "It's Esposito Broussard," Rochelle said. "Oh, our name isn't good enough for her?" Belinda joked. "Hey, I'm just hearing this now," Jared replied. "No, it's just that I'm married now, but that doesn't mean I forget who I am, right?" Rochelle said. The happy couple bought a 3-bedroom house in DeGard and started preparing for their baby. Jared often joked that he went to work just to get some rest from all the sanding, painting, and cleaning. He didn't tell Rochelle, but another reason he appreciated going to work was to escape her loud, childish friends. He didn't expect Rochelle to cut ties with her childhood friends entirely, but he found it troubling that she let her ex-boyfriend visit their home. Leslie Webb enjoyed reminding Rochelle and their group that she and Jared used to be close. Often Leslie would offer to help out when Rochelle's belly got too big to be comfortable. Instead of getting upset, Rochelle would just smirk at Leslie. However, the flirting made Jared uneasy. He surprised everyone by telling Leslie to stop or leave his house. "Honey, she's just joking," Rochelle quickly defended Leslie. "Leslie, tell him you're just kidding." Gloria Ann Broussard was born just 5 months after Jared and Rochelle's wedding and clearly became a daddy's girl. Whenever the baby heard her dad's voice, her warm brown eyes would search until she found him, and then she would smile without teeth. "Yeah, Daddy, she's been a handful the whole time you were gone," Rochelle would say. "Is that true?" Jared asked his little girl. "Have you been naughty for Mommy? Did you make those diapers extra stinky?" Gloria learned to crawl, then walk, and soon she was moving around very quickly. When Rochelle called for her to stop, Gloria would just giggle with delight. But if Jared asked her to stop or come back, she would immediately turn around and run to him. "I can't stand you! I can't stand you at all, you hear?" Rochelle would snap whenever Jared smirked at her. When Gloria was almost 2 years old, they found out Rochelle was pregnant again. She was unhappy about this. She had just returned to her classes at ULD and had even decided to major in education. A second baby would delay their plans once more until the baby could be cared for without needing so much help. But it was still a joyful time for them. Jared was busy turning the 3rd bedroom into a nursery. "And you're going to be a big sister," Rochelle said to Gloria. "You can help Mommy with the baby, right?" "Right," Gloria replied. "I can hold it and rock it." Jared had just returned home after another 3.5 weeks away, when Tammy, April, and Leslie were visiting. Gloria had just fallen asleep for her nap. She only napped for her daddy, not her mommy. Tammy was complaining about a date she had with a man who was slightly older but not very nice. "I can't believe this guy shook my hand and said, 'Hey, don't be a stranger,'" Tammy hissed, her pretty face twisted in anger. Jared laughed, and 4 sets of eyes glared at him. "Oh my God, you're joking," Jared teased. "So you used your own selfish reasons to decide this guy was good enough for you, and now you're surprised he's selfish too? Really? Does he have to be here?" Tammy asked Rochelle about Jared. "Yes, he needs to be here," Jared said, taking a beer from the fridge. "He helps pay the bills, cuts the grass, and puts food in the fridge. Yes, he's part of this." "Anyway, can you believe it? The time together was amazing, and then I get this 'don't be a stranger' nonsense," Tammy said. Let me tell you, if you got close on the first date, he won't be around again, Jared interjected. But it was great, Tammy defended. Great for a guy? Sure, Jared replied. But even if it was that good, why would he just want you when he could have you and your friends, too? What a jerk, Tammy said to Rochelle. No wonder you're still with Tommy. Jared glanced at his wife. The horror on Rochelle's face told him everything he needed to know. The shock on Leslie's and April's faces, and the smug look on Tammy's confirmed it. I'm leaving Thursday, Jared said quietly to Rochelle. I won't be back for at least 2 weeks. Jared, it was just... Rochelle began. You need to have your things out before I return, okay? Jared said firmly. With that, he walked through the kitchen to the garage. Oh no, Tammy, why? Why did you say that? Rochelle lamented. They all heard the garage door open and then Jared's truck start. What? He brought it on himself, Tammy argued. But did I? Did I deserve this? Rochelle yelled. The truck sped away quickly. You forgot to close the door, April pointed out. Rochelle decided to stay put. She and Gloria would wait for Jared to come home from work. Then Teresa White handed Rochelle some papers. One was about ending her marriage. Another told her to leave the house. But the third paper was the hardest for Rochelle. It made her scared. It asked for a test to see who Gloria's father was. After their second daughter was born, there would be another test for the baby, too. When Rochelle dated Tommy, his mother had shown her some baby pictures. Gloria had brown eyes just like Tommy's. Baby Tommy had a sweet dimple in his right cheek, and so did Gloria. There were also many similarities between Jared's baby pictures and Gloria's. Penny Richards from the law offices of Richards, Pellichet and Richards was hired to help Jared with his divorce from Rochelle. Come on, Gloria, we're going to see Mama and Pawpaw, Rochelle called. No, Gloria replied. Yes, Rochelle insisted, bending down to pick up her daughter. No, Gloria said, running away. Gloria, I don't have time for this, Rochelle shouted, chasing after her stubborn daughter. A few light taps on Gloria's rear only made her cry louder, but they didn't change her mind. Connie helped calm down the crying girl while Rochelle spoke with her father. Just as Connie got Gloria to settle down, Francis came into the kitchen, upset. You need to talk to your daughter, he told Rochelle sharply. He grabbed a beer from the fridge. I can't believe this, he said, gritting his teeth. Rochelle sat on the couch, crying. Her own father had insulted her. With all the money spent on your education, how could you do something so foolish? Francis shouted from the kitchen. Connie hugged Rochelle and rubbed her back. When Rochelle seemed a little better, Connie looked at the papers. Oh my God, no, Rochelle, a divorce, Connie exclaimed. Ask her why, Francis yelled. Ask her why her husband, a good man, wants a divorce from her. That's enough, Francis, Connie replied firmly. Order to leave? He can't make you move out. This is your house too, right? Connie said in shock, reading the second set of papers. But when Rochelle's mother read the third set of papers, she was silent. She glanced at her daughter, stood up, and left the room. No, that is your daughter, she said sharply to Francis. You go and talk to her. Although they were disappointed in their daughter, Francis and Connie did lend Rochelle $2,000 for the help she needed. They called it a loan, even though they knew they would probably not get that money back. I cannot make you move out, Sophia said. But if you stay here, you will need to share the household costs. Without a job or income, it will be tough to manage. Sophia looked at the request for DNA tests for both Gloria and the baby. She turned her attention to Rochelle, who kept her expression neutral. Is there any chance that either child is not his? Sophia asked. Yes, ma'am, Rochelle replied, blushing deeply. Jared was away at work, and the logs confirmed his location. But someone who knew about welding had closed the doors of Tommy's truck shut. Someone who understood how to use an acetylene torch had damaged the drive shaft on Tammy's car. When she tried to back out of her driveway, the car would not move forward. Even over her music, she heard the sound of the drive shaft hitting the road. Someone also tampered with Billy's motorcycle. The first bump he hit at a good speed caused serious problems, throwing him forward. Billy's helmet saved him, but he still suffered serious injuries. Someone with welding skills had damaged Chad's steering. He had trouble turning the wheel, and the car would only go straight, whether going forward or in reverse. Charlie, Richie, Mikey, Leslie, Tamara, and April were all nervous. Nothing had happened to their cars yet. But would today be different? Would today be the day they got in and something went wrong? When Jared was due back, Rochelle waited at their house. She called to confirm that Jared had arrived on the boat at the intended time. If the boat picked him up at the rig at 2:30, he usually got to the canal by 4. Then it was a short drive home, but by 8 o'clock, Jared still had not returned. Rochelle had already taken her and Gloria's things to her parents' house when she moved back. Now, as she walked around the house, it felt new to her. The bed was still there, but now she noticed there were no pillows. The bathroom still had the nice towels she had bought, but Jared's razor, deodorant, and cologne were all gone. The closet was also empty. But he was away. He couldn't. Rochelle cried. "Belinda!" she shouted. "Roach L. Esposito-Broussard called for you," Belinda said, trying to reach Jared on his new phone. "What did you tell her?" Jared asked as the lights of Houston faded behind him. "The truth. You aren't here," his mother replied. Not long after Gloria was born, a company contacted Jared. They offered him a 6-month job to work on the Alaskan pipeline. Rochelle didn't even consider it, even though the pay was nearly 4 times what he was making before. The truth was, Jared wasn't very interested. It meant 6 months away from his little girl, with only a few weekends off to see her. And having spent his whole life in southwest Louisiana, he was unsure about facing the harsh Alaskan winter. But now, he had no excuse not to go. "And by the time I'm done, the divorce will be finished," he told himself. Chris Fontenot from Fontenot's Equipment and Services had been told by Jared not to inform Rochelle that he no longer worked there. But Chris had a soft spot for upset pregnant women, and eventually revealed that Jared had quit. "Honestly, I even offered him land work or shop work," Chris shared. "It doesn't pay much. Do you know how much an underwater welder earns? But he just said it was time to move on." Then the 59-year-old man made Rochelle uncomfortable by saying he would help her out if she ever needed it. Jared was wise enough not to tell Chris where he was going. Chris did tell Rochelle the truth. Welding jobs were available, not just in oil, but in many other industries too. "Man, as good as Broussard is, there's no limit to where he could go," Chris said. With tears in her eyes, Rochelle had to tell Sophia to cancel the request for counseling. Since they did not know where Jared was, and Belinda wouldn't say, they couldn't force him to go. The DNA test on Gloria showed that Jared Broussard was not her father. It also revealed that Tommy Huval Jr. was not the father either. Tommy hit Rochelle hard enough to knock out a tooth. Chad Theriot complained and made threats, but eventually agreed to take a DNA test. "What?" Chad yelled when Teresa White, the process server for Penny Richards, delivered papers saying he was being sued by Jared Broussard for back child support. "How am I supposed to pay this?" "Here's an idea. Get a job," Teresa suggested. "And what about my car?" Chad shouted. "I give up," Teresa said. "What about your car?" "It won't start." "I'm still dealing with this," Chad said angrily. "Life goes on, man, life goes on," Teresa replied with a shrug as she got into her car. While Chad looked for a legal way to avoid paying child support, Rochelle was trying to use her daughter to get what she wanted. Belinda had enjoyed being a grandmother and loved having a granddaughter. It hurt her deeply to discover that she wasn't related to the lively little girl, and probably not to the baby girl that Rochelle was expecting. "Please, Miss Belinda," Rochelle cried as Belinda attended to Gloria. "I don't want a divorce." "My Jared wouldn't have wanted a wife like that," Belinda responded. "Looks like nobody is getting what they want." "Miss Belinda, I made a mistake, all right. Guess you've never made one, huh?" Rochelle said angrily. Belinda looked at Rochelle's belly and then at her flushed face. She continued singing to Gloria softly. Rochelle took her daughter and got ready to leave. "Tell Nana goodbye," Rochelle said sharply. Belinda's smirk made Rochelle even angrier. She stormed out of the house. Once Belinda closed the door, some tears slipped down her cheeks. "Why, God, why couldn't that be my Jared's?" Belinda asked quietly. "You know I'm a good grandmother." Kathleen Ann Esposito was born nearly 4 months after that day when Tammy Hale revealed that Rochelle and Tommy were still together. The baby had a tuft of blonde hair and bright blue eyes. A DNA test confirmed that Thomas Huval Jr. was the father. Rochelle named Gloria after her paternal grandmother. Kathleen was named after her maternal grandmother, but this did not bring joy to Connie. "Congrats," Connie said sharply. 21 years old and already a mother of 2 by 2 different fathers. "Congrats." "Stop, Connie," Frances said with a sigh. "Just stop. Our daughter acts this way and somehow it's our fault. We raised her to think it's okay to be with anyone." What should have been a happy moment felt painful for Rochelle as she watched her father, once strong and brave, walk slowly out of her room at the hospital. The next day, Rochelle and her baby were wheeled out of the hospital. Francis tiredly helped the nurse put his daughter and granddaughter into the car. He nodded silently in thanks and then closed the car door. "Daddy, Rochelle started after he got on the road heading towards DeGard. "Don't, baby, please, just don't," Francis replied in a flat voice. "Please, just don't say anything, dear." 6 months after that difficult day, when Rochelle's perfect life was changed by Tammy's news, Carmen Davis from Davis Realty had a buyer for the charming 3-bedroom house. After paying off the mortgage, Rochelle received a check for $9,812. The first thing she did was to pay back her parents the $2,000 they had lent her to hire Sophia Kutra. Her father looked at the check and then passed it to her mother. "Dad, I'm sorry," Rochelle whispered as they sat at the kitchen table. "I am too, sweetheart," he sighed, pushing aside his half-eaten dinner and leaving the room. "Mom, what can I do?" Rochelle asked her mother, tears flowing down her cheeks. "What's done is done," Connie said without much emotion, continuing to eat her dinner. "But I'm sorry," Rochelle cried. "Yeah, and does that fix anything?" Connie replied. "Being sorry doesn't put diapers on those kids, does it? Does it put food on this table?" Connie went back to her meal. After a few bites, she also pushed her plate away and stood up. "I hope they were good, those boys," Connie said. "I hope they were worth it." Rochelle cleaned the table and then the kitchen. Just as she finished drying a pot, Gloria announced that she was hungry. "But you already had rice, remember?" Rochelle smiled down at her daughter. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Gloria asked as Rochelle placed her in her high chair. Rochelle didn't respond, just opened a jar of applesauce. As she set the bowl in front of Gloria, little Kathleen began to cry. After changing Kathleen's diaper, Rochelle sat down with her daughters in the kitchen. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Gloria asked again while making a mess with the applesauce. Meanwhile, Jared was in a cozy waiting room, looking out at the city of Houston, Texas. The receptionist had striking red hair and pale skin with a few freckles. Jared thought about how nice it would be to have more adventures. "But I've got lots of money now," Jared mused as the sun reflected off a nearby glass and steel building. "And nowhere to spend it," he continued to think. Alaska had been very cold. He couldn't believe how freezing it felt. Even with 3 layers of thermal underwear, thick ski pants, 2 sweaters, his parka, and face gear, he still felt like he might freeze. The heated socks he wore had helped a little. Jared was convinced that if it weren't for his warm socks, he would have turned into a block of ice. They had offered him a big amount of money to work a second shift, and Jared politely declined. He had just returned home to help his mother pack up her small house. Aunt Michelle, her sister, lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and had invited her to move in with her. As soon as Jared finished sealing the last box, he got a call from a company asking him to work for 3 months in the North Atlantic Sea. The money they offered was incredible. He realized he would need to work almost 2 years offshore in the Gulf to earn that much. Belinda had sold him the house by Baylor Lake, which took a small part of his savings. Buying a new truck used up some more, but he still had a good amount left. "I have enough money, but sadly, I also have too much time," Jared thought as he put the last box in the truck. After a hug and a kiss, his mother went one way and he went the other. Time was not on Jared's side. He did not love Rochelle. In fact, he often found himself not even liking her. Looking back, he wished he had asked for a paternity test before marrying her. If he was the father, he could take care of child support. Of course, Gloria was not his child, and neither was Kathleen. He sometimes wondered about Kathleen. Did she inherit her mother's beauty? Or did she look like Tommy? He had not loved Rochelle, but he had loved being a father. He adored his little girl. The fact that his wife had been with her old boyfriend and her friends mocked him made it impossible for Jared to stay married to Rochelle or to be a true father to Gloria. Penny Richards, now Penny Jones, his lawyer, arranged for a property management company to oversee his home while he was in the North Atlantic for 94 days. He thought their fees were a bit high, but he had enough money to manage it. Alaska had not prepared him for the biting cold of the North Atlantic. The strong winds howled around the tall structures, and no matter where he went, Jared felt the chill. On the open water, it was especially chilling. I really don't care, Jared thought as he sealed the last container. As soon as my shift is over, I'm getting out of here. And he did. After just 1 week at home, he started working for King Sanitation. They sent him to Santa Barbara, California. He loved the warm weather and the fun atmosphere there. But after a few months, he admitted to Bronson Metier, the head of the Santa Barbara office, that he was feeling homesick. Jared told Gordon King, the owner and CEO of King Sanitation, that he missed home. Gordon had 2 welders working at the Baylor Lake office, but he promised Jared he would contact him if he needed help. They said goodbye on friendly terms. 1 week after getting home, Jared received an invitation to the corporate office in Houston, Texas. They wanted him to lead a team of welders to Nigeria. The person on the phone laughed and mentioned that Nigeria was much warmer than Alaska. The sun made the nearby black glass and steel buildings shine like a bright diamond. Jared turned his gaze away from the light and looked at his watch again. The email stated their appointment was at 3:30. Mark Barnes had confirmed the time over the phone. The receptionist, who was very nice-looking, also confirmed that the appointment was set for 3:30. His watch now read 4:20. The clock on the wall behind the receptionist showed the same time. Jared stood up, took one last glance at Houston, Texas, and exited the corporate headquarters. "Sir?" the receptionist called, but Jared let the door shut behind him. In the lobby, a security guard finished a phone call and gestured to Jared as he stepped off the elevator. "Sir? Mr. Broussard? Mr. Barnes is waiting for you," the guard said. "Please tell Mr. Barnes not to contact me again," Jared replied. "I won't work for a company that treats its employees with such disrespect." For his little negotiation misstep, Mark Barnes lost his job, received a small severance, and was advised that he might not want to use the company as a reference. Jared went home and had a quiet dinner at Sweet Peas. He thought about stopping by the Dead End Bar for a cold drink, where he could relax and watch the lively atmosphere, but he felt more like resting in bed. When he lay down, the digital clock read 8:37. He wished he could tell Gloria the story of Bunky, the chunky monkey. Someone had given her a stuffed monkey, and Jared had created rhymes to entertain her. Chunky, clunky, flunky, hunky. Jared smiled while resting in his cozy bed. Chris Fontenot was happy to hear from Jared. He didn't even wonder why Jared called him at home at 8:54 in the evening. "Yeah, I need to catch up on some shop work," Chris agreed cheerfully. Jared arrived the next morning feeling a bit tired from the few drinks he had the night before, but he made it on time, which was more than what many of the other workers could say. Chris hugged Jared and then teasingly tugged at the full beard Jared had grown while in Alaska. "Wow, it really feels odd," Chris joked. "Yeah, it does," Jared replied, rubbing his chin. Despite a rough morning, Jared focused on his work. He made sure everything was perfect before starting on the next task. "You look great, you know that?" Chris said. One of the men was working on a swing set for a school. Jared paused to watch for a moment, then moved on to his next job. "Do you have any kids?" the man asked Jared. "I did," Jared answered softly. "I'm sorry to hear that," the man said, and returned to his work. One day out of nowhere, Eric Miller called Jared's home phone. "Hey, my book got picked up for a movie," Eric exclaimed. "Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations," Jared said, thrilled for his old friend. "But how will they turn poems into a movie?" "No, it's a novel I wrote," Eric chuckled. "But we're having a party at the backyard barbecue. Can you come?" "When is it?" Jared asked eagerly. "Tomorrow night at 9, Eric said. "I can't wait to see you. It's been too long." The shop was closed on Saturday, and Chris didn't want to pay overtime. Jared decided it was time to shave and trim his wild hair. His mom said he looked rough. Wagamon's Barbershop was a well-known place in Degard, Louisiana. It had started years ago by 3 brothers. The locals called it Wax Barbershop because only one brother could cut hair well. Then that brother got sick, and the others struggled to give decent haircuts. One of the brothers passed the shop to his daughter, who hired 2 young women to help. It still had its nickname because many boys and men had to shake it off after a pretty woman cut their hair. "I'd like it short and neat, please," Jared said as he settled into the chair. 40 minutes later, aside from a permanent squint from the sun, Jared looked just like he did in his high school yearbook pictures. He paid the young woman and decided to give her a $10 tip. "Thank you," she said happily. "No, thank you," Jared replied, admiring his reflection in the long mirror. Jared smiled as he entered the barbecue restaurant, feeling a bit self-conscious. "Hey, do I look like an axe murderer?" Jared joked with a customer. "How would you know what one looks like?" The customer laughed. "My mom told me," Jared replied with a chuckle. The customer started to ask more, but Jared waved goodbye and headed home. He bought an expensive bottle of champagne and a cheap card that said, "Congratulations," then spent the afternoon doing chores and taking a nap to pass the time. When Jared arrived at the back room of the barbecue place, he was greeted with a loud shout from Eric. "You made it!" Eric yelled, still looking much the same as he did in high school. Eric was still a bit overweight and had the same wild brown hair, thick glasses, and a heavy metal band shirt with shorts and tennis shoes. He waved at Jared with a frosty beer in his hand, eyeing the champagne bottle happily. A couple of familiar faces were there, too. Jack Powell, who had joined the Navy and fell in love with Japan, was with his wife, Ryutu. Clifton Abrams was also there. He looked better, but still quite thin. Jared teased him about his receding hairline. The party had a good mix of old friends and new faces, and there was plenty of good food and cold drinks to go around. "Hey, Eric, we got you a little surprise!" one of Eric's neighborhood friends shouted as he stumbled toward the door. Suddenly, Leslie and Rochelle entered, both dressed in playful cheerleader outfits. Billy St. Charles followed, holding a large boombox. Though Billy had been in an accident that changed his looks, he joined in on the fun as he started the music. Leslie and Rochelle began to dance, waving their pom-poms. Jared felt a bit overwhelmed and tried to fade into the background, feeling embarrassed for his ex-wife. It was clear she was not enjoying attention, even if she wore a forced smile. "I hear we're celebrating something special tonight," Leslie shouted over the laughter and cheers. "Yeah, I sold a book for a movie," Eric proudly announced, though he struggled to stand. "A movie? That's amazing," Leslie cheered, though her excitement seemed a bit forced. "But is it hot in here?" "It's too hot," Rochelle chimed in. With that, the atmosphere became lively as everyone laughed and joined in the celebration. This brought on more screams and cheers from the guests. Another song played loudly, and Leslie and Rochelle kept dancing, their outfits barely covering them. "Hey, Jawed, didn't you marry her?" Clifton, tipsy, asked Jared. "Yeah," Jared replied. "Wow, and you just let that happen?" Clifton said, astonished. Jared was thankful he had only had 2 beers. Watching the scene made him feel uneasy. Now Leslie and Rochelle were only in their bikini tops and bottoms. Jared wondered if he could sneak out before Rochelle noticed him. However, the small space where Rochelle and Leslie were dancing was right next to the door leading to the main room of the restaurant. "Hey, Jawed, how do you deal with an ex-wife?" Clifton asked, still laughing. "Get a lawyer?" Jared suggested, hoping Clifton would lean back a bit and stop breathing his food and beer breath in his face. "Good one," Clifton said, still chuckling. No, you'll love this. You just throw some money at her." Jared couldn't help but smile a little. Clifton was laughing almost too hard, though. Watching them, Rochelle felt a deep sense of shame, something she thought she had left behind. She recognized Eric Miller and Jack Powell from their school days, as well as Clifton Abrams, who had a big crush on her back then. Next to her, Leslie was still excitedly cheering as they danced to the loud music. It was Leslie's idea to start dancing. Rochelle had tried to find a job, but with the Baggett mattress factory closing, there weren't many options left. Her parents were still helping her out. The truth was, they were her main support. Chad was frequently late with child support and often didn't send enough. Tommy was no different, always late and short on payments. Leslie suggested this could help them earn a bit of extra cash. Now Rochelle hesitated, unsure about her next move. She glanced at Clifton and then noticed Jared Broussard. "Don't worry, I'm leaving," Jared said softly as he walked past her. For a moment, Rochelle was speechless. Just as Jared opened the door to the main room, she turned around. "Gloria misses her daddy," Rochelle said. "Oh? Are you not taking her to see Chad on visiting day?" Jared asked. "She misses her dad, not the donor," Rochelle replied. Jared walked into the main room. "And I miss you too," Rochelle called out as the door shut. That night, Jared sat in his dim living room, finishing his 7th beer. He longed for someone to talk to, someone who could offer guidance. His father had died a long time ago, and Jared had never met his father's parents. His mother's parents had also passed away around the time he was born, leaving him without any male role models. Since Phoenix was an hour behind Baylor Lake, Jared waited until noon the next day to call his Aunt Michelle. She was happy to hear from him. "Your only nephew," Jared joked. Then his mom was on the line. Jared assured her he had made it to church that morning, Sunday Mass at St. Elizabeth's by the lake. "I thought it was at 9:15, Belinda said. "Only in summer, Mom," Jared replied with a smile. He told her about seeing Rochelle, Esposito, and left out the part about her dancing. "Do you love her?" Belinda asked quietly. "Who, Rochelle? No, it just made me sad to see her," Jared confessed. "Not her," Belinda clarified. "I mean your daughter." "She's not, but yeah, Mom, I miss her a lot," Jared admitted. Belinda noticed her son was troubled, as he rarely called her Mom. She waited a moment, but he stayed silent. "Then maybe you should see about getting her, yeah?" Belinda suggested. "But what will everyone think?" Jared replied. "She isn't really my daughter." "Who cares what they think?" Belinda said. "That girl? She knows the truth. That baby girl is missing her dad." At lunchtime the next day, Jared called Penny Jones's office and set up an appointment for the next morning. He then told Chris he would need the next day off. Jared arrived at the Esposito house. Rochelle opened the door before he could knock, beaming with happiness. She walked towards him, arms wide. Jared surprised her by placing his hand on her shoulder, gently pushing her back. "I'm here to see the girls," Jared said plainly. Rochelle looked at him in disbelief. This wasn't how she imagined their meeting would go. When she learned Jared was filing for visitation rights, she thought she would be included. "I'm just here to see the girls," Jared repeated. "Oh, right, of course," Rochelle said, stepping back into her parents' home. "Who's that? Gloria? Who's that?" Connie asked with a cheerful smile. "Hey, good to see you," Francis said, grinning as he shook Jared's hand. "Daddy? Daddy? It's you?" Gloria gasped as Jared knelt down. "Yeah, it's me," Jared said, a tear rolling down his face. "Daddy, wait here," Gloria shouted, then ran out of the room. "Kathleen, this is your daddy. Say, 'Hi, Daddy.'" Connie encouraged the small child. "See, Gloria can run fast," Jared said to Rochelle, who was quietly crying. Jared, Francis, and Connie chuckled as Kathleen hid behind her maw-maw. "Daddy, you need to tell Kathleen about Bunky Monkey. She doesn't know about him," Gloria shouted as she dashed back in, holding the worn, stuffed monkey. "Well, I have Punky Monkey and Spunky Monkey at my house. I'll tell her all about them when we get to my place, okay?" Jared smiled, happy she still remembered Bunky Monkey. "Okay, you all have my phone number. Rochelle? It's the same one my mom used to have, and I gave your dad my cell number," Jared said as he picked up Gloria. "You ready?" When the test results about Gloria Ann Broussard came back, Jared asked to remove his name from the child's birth certificate. His name was never on Kathleen's birth certificate either. He had never thought of the 15-month-old toddler as his daughter, but Penny gently asked Jared if he thought it was right to keep the two sisters apart. "Is it fair to let Gloria have fun with her daddy while Kathleen doesn't?" Penny asked. Rochelle didn't mind if Jared wanted to be recognized as the father of her daughters, as long as Chad and Tommy gave up their parental rights. Chad was quick to sign away his rights. Penny joked that he moved through the papers so fast there were traces of smoke. Now, as Jared packed diaper bags and a Barbie suitcase for Kathleen and Gloria, Chad was showing off to April. "Yeah, I miss my kid," Chad laughed. "Now he's the one who has to pay her child support." Chad was too caught up in himself to notice that April seemed quieter than usual. When they stopped at Huval's levee, she softly said she wasn't feeling well and thought she might be getting sick. "Can't even help me out?" Chad demanded. "Yeah? Do you want me to be sick all over it?" April shouted back. After that, he slapped her and drove her home. "I really think I am getting sick," April said as she stepped out of the car. "It's called common sense." She had asked Chad about their wedding plans. She'd been wearing a cheap engagement ring for 3 years. The diamond was small and the band was made of gold. But whenever she brought up marriage, Chad always had some reason why they couldn't go forward. April had hoped that now Chad no longer had to support Gloria financially, he would focus more on their wedding plans. Instead, he was talking about joining his older brother Davy, investing in a racing car, and competing on Saturdays in Pinoak, Louisiana. "Yeah, Chad, I'm really seeing things clearly now," April said as she walked into the house she shared with her parents. When Jared asked Tommy for support, Tommy thought for a moment and then agreed to sign the papers. He didn't like paying anything to Rochelle Esposito and didn't want to be responsible for her child. "It's like giving money over and over and never getting anything back," he complained. "Doesn't she know about birth control?" Tammy Hale was also realizing some truths as she listened to Charlie and Tommy laugh about how foolish Jared Broussard was. Her last date was with a top salesman from a car dealership in LG. They had shared a moment in the car on the way to a nice Italian restaurant, and then things continued at her place. "Then he turns out to be married," Tammy grumbled to herself. Looking back, she should have guessed when he wanted to go to her place or rent a room. $600 a month? Not anymore? Goodbye, Tommy shouted, laughing. "Such an idiot," Charlie chimed in, chuckling. Charlie was still in college, and it had been nearly 7 years since high school graduation. He still hadn't gotten enough credits for his degree, yet he thought he was smarter than Jared or Jack. After all, Jared had gone to a small technical school, and Jack had joined the Navy. Tammy tossed her long red hair back and reminded Charlie and Tommy that she needed to start cleaning. That worked like a charm. Hearing the word work made both of them leave her apartment. As Tammy picked up the many empty beer cans in her place, Jared carried both girls to his truck. Rochelle followed behind, feeling a bit disappointed that this reunion wasn't what she had wished for. "If you need anything, just call me, all right?" Rochelle said. "Even if you just want to talk." "Sure," Jared replied, fully intending not to reach out to Rochelle. Kathleen felt unsure about being with this stranger, but her sister's excitement made her feel better. She waved goodbye to her mom, and soon they were driving away. Much of Nana's furniture was still in the house, making it familiar and comforting for Gloria. Her old bed was still there, along with a new one. Kathleen would sleep in Gloria's old bed because it had safety rails, while Gloria would rest in a new princess bed. There were even her old toys tucked away under the bed. There were 2 stuffed monkeys named Punky and Spunky. While Jared shared a fun story about how Punky and Spunky came to live with him, Rochelle sat quietly in her room at her parents' house. In front of her was the wedding album. Among their friends, Rochelle was the only one who had gotten married and then divorced. She was also the only one with kids. Tamara had a baby boy but chose to give him up for adoption. Soon after, she moved away and no one knew where she went. Ariel had shared that she was gay, which surprised no one. Now she lived in Austin, Texas, with a woman who had a tough appearance and a love for strong drinks. Rochelle sighed and closed the photo album. It was a Friday night, a little after 8 o'clock. She didn't have her kids with her, no work to do with Leslie, and she didn't need to hurry home to help her mother. She picked up her cell phone, thinking about texting Leslie, Tamara, or April to see if they wanted to hang out. But then she put her phone back down. The one thing she really wanted to do was not possible. She wanted to be at her home. Instead, she was in her old room at her parents' house, the same room she had when she was in high school. She was sleeping on the same bed. This was her life for now. Suddenly, her phone rang, and she smiled when she saw it was April calling. Rochelle was shocked when April asked for Jared Broussard's phone number. "What? How would I know it, remember? We're divorced?" Rochelle replied. "April, I have to go. Tammy is on the other line." "You're joking," Rochelle exclaimed when Tammy asked for Jared's number too. The end. Author's note. I write these stories for fun and share them here for you to enjoy. Thank you for reading. I especially appreciate those who take the time to rate my stories and leave feedback. As for the issues with Tommy's car, Tammy's drive shaft, and Billy's motorcycle, if it wasn't Jared, who could it have been? He had many friends at Fontenot's Equipment and Services and the Votech School. Besides, don't you think Jared is the only one the group has treated unfairly? By posting this story under Why, I've met a fun little goal I made for myself. In 2017, I wanted to write at least one story for each letter of the alphabet and 5 stories for every letter. I know it's a bit silly, but it kept me motivated and entertained. This will be my last story on this site for a while. I want to focus more on some other projects I am working on. How long will I be taking a break? I really don't know. It could be a month, or maybe 2 months, or even a year. I just can't say. Hope you have a nice day. Kathleen knew it was Wednesday and told everyone at Happyland Daycare that her daddy was coming to get her. How does that little girl know it's Wednesday? One staff member asked another. Yeah, and how does she know when it's her daddy's turn to pick her up? The other woman replied. At 2:45, Kathleen would start putting her crayons away. She always made sure to line them up in order. Black, brown, blue, purple, red, yellow, green, and orange. If the crayons weren't organized, she'd get very upset. At 2:45, she would carefully put her crayons back, stack her coloring books neatly, line up the blocks against the bench, and look around for any toys that needed to be put away. That girl has her quirks, Magdalene Savoy, the head of the daycare, noted. If it was cold outside, Kathleen would stand by the coat hooks and wait for a teacher to help her put on her coat. If no one came after 5 minutes, she would call out for help. On warm days like today, she would stand by the large glass door and watch for her daddy's truck. When her mother, Maw or Paw came to pick her up, Kathleen would be busy drawing, playing, or singing little songs until they came to get her. If she was having fun, she might be a little stubborn about leaving. Gloria also knew it was Wednesday. On Wednesdays, she was usually one of the first children to run out of William C.C. Claiborne Elementary School in search of her daddy's truck. It was the same on Fridays when it was his weekend. At Daddy's house, they would have juice and animal crackers. If it was sunny, they'd play ball or swing on the swings Daddy set up for them. On rainy days, they would sit at the table to draw and play with paint. Daddy even knew how to make Play-Doh. Wednesday meant dinner at McDonald's for his girls. Jared knew how to cook because his mother had taught him. During his marriage to Rochelle Esposito Broussard, she was always happy to let Jared take care of the cooking when he was home from work. But making meals for a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old was not something Jared was good at. So they often went to McDonald's. Jared bought them their Happy Meals and sat them down. He squeezed some ketchup onto a napkin for Kathleen. Daddy, I need to go to the bathroom, Gloria said. Right now, sweetheart? Jared asked, trying not to sound annoyed. I can take her, a friendly young woman offered. Jared looked up at her. She had short, strawberry blonde hair, a cute face, and a warm smile. She was about 4 feet, 10 inches tall, even with the high-heeled shoes she wore, and she had on a business jacket and a knee-length skirt. Ma'am, I appreciate that, but I don't know you, Jared said. Oh, you're right, the woman said, her beautiful green eyes wide. I wasn't thinking, was I? But if you'd watch our food so they don't throw it away, I'd really appreciate that, Jared continued. I can do that, she agreed, and sat down next to him. I'll be right back, Jared said, lifting Kathleen with one arm while holding onto Gloria's hand with the other. He took them into the restroom, cleaned the toilet seat, and set Gloria down to do her business. While she was busy, Jared also changed Kathleen's diaper. And one day, you will be a big girl like your sister and use the big toilet, right? Jared encouraged. Uh-huh, Kathleen nodded. Okay, Daddy, I'm done, Gloria called out. How does Rochelle manage all this? Jared wondered aloud. Thank you, Jared said to the young woman as he brought the 2 girls back to the table. No problem, the woman smiled, her country accent noticeable. By the way, I'm Jared Broussard, and these are my daughters, Gloria and Kathleen, he said. I'm 5, but she's only 2, Gloria added proudly. And I'm Anne Huval, the short woman smiled. Her accent was strong when she said her name, stretching Anne into 2 syllables and Huval into 3. From northern Louisiana? Jared guessed. Yeah, how did you know? Anne asked, surprised. Shreveport, he guessed. Where's that? Gloria asked, her little face scrunched up in confusion. Paulton at the other end of I-20, Anne confirmed. Uh-huh, Jared smiled. So what are you doing in DeGard? Working. I work at Young Insurance, Anne replied. That's my company, Jared said. Truck and homeowners. Well, we also do health insurance, and even though no one wants to think about it, we offer life insurance too, Anne explained. Health is through my job too, along with life insurance, Jared said. Fontenot's Welding. Well, Let me give you my card in case you want to learn more, okay? Anne smiled. The card read Anne DeMonte, and Jared raised his eyebrow. I haven't had time to get them changed, Anne admitted. Well, congratulations. When did you get married? Jared asked. Tommy and I got married 3 weeks ago on Saturday, Anne said, holding out her left hand to show her engagement ring and wedding band. Tommy? Tommy Huval Jr.? Jared asked. Yeah, do you know him? Anne asked. The same guy I'm thinking of. We went to school together, Jared replied. Huval is a common name around here. Did you go to Baylor Lake? Anne asked. That's the same Tommy, Jared said, keeping his expression neutral. Jared felt uneasy about Tommy Huval Jr. He had never liked the loud, arrogant boy during their schooling days. Jared was not happy to learn that his wife, Rochelle, was still seeing Tommy without his knowledge. They had even tried to make it seem like Kathleen was his child. A friend of Jared's had let it slip that Rochelle was still involved with Tommy. After hearing this, Jared demanded a paternity test for both Gloria and the unborn Kathleen. The tests showed that neither child was Jared's. The father of Gloria was Chad, a former classmate, while Tommy was indeed the father of Kathleen. Even though he wasn't their biological father, Jared loved his kids deeply and cared for them. Well, congratulations, Mrs. Huval, Jared said. He looked around and asked, So, is Tommy here? Anne replied, Oh no, he had a client who took too long. I told him I'd just grab a Big Mac. Anne then stood up and walked to the counter. Jared appreciated how her outfit looked on her. Daddy, do you want my French fries? Gloria asked. As usual, Gloria had only eaten half her fries. Jared smiled and happily finished the rest, making loud munching noises. To his surprise, Anne returned to their table with her tray. My daddy's the French fry monster, Gloria said, grinning. He is? Anne replied, moving her fries away from Jared. Here, Daddy, Kathleen said, offering him her remaining fries. Jared playfully made the girls laugh and Anne smile as he continued his munching sounds. Kathleen squealed when he pretended to nibble on her little hand. So, you and Tommy were friends in high school? Anne asked. Not really, Jared replied honestly. But you know how high school can be. Tell me about it. Those were the longest 3 years of my life, Anne said with a laugh. 3? Jared asked, surprised. I skipped a grade, she explained. Looking at his watch, Jared realized he needed to leave soon. Rochelle never minded if he was a little late, but he wanted to keep Gloria and Kathleen on their schedule. Say goodbye to Mrs. Huval. It's time to go to Mommy's, Jared said while wiping Kathleen's sticky hands with a wet wipe from his pocket. Bye, Mrs. Huval, Gloria said cheerfully. Bye, Anne replied with a smile. We come here every Wednesday, Jared mentioned unexpectedly. He wasn't sure why he said that since Anne was married, and to a man he wasn't fond of. Tommy, huh? Not Tom or Thomas, but Tommy, Jared thought as he carried both girls, one in each arm. Time to grow up, Tommy. An employee held the door open for Jared, smiling. Thanks. See you next Wednesday, Jared said as he walked out. Oh, isn't this your weekend? The employee asked. Nope, not today, Jared answered, a bit surprised. Then he noticed that the kind woman was the manager of the fast food restaurant. He smiled and waved goodbye. Daddy has a girlfriend, Gloria told her mom when Jared brought them into the Esposito house. I do, Jared asked, smiling. That's news to me. He does? Rochelle questioned, feeling uneasy. The pretty blonde kept wishing and hoping that she could win Jared's heart again. She promised herself that if she got another chance, she would be the best wife he ever had. You should have kept that promise before, her mother had commented sharply, instead of being with anyone who said hi to you. Remember Miss Huval? Gloria reminded her dad. Gloria, sweetie, she is married to someone else, Jared patiently explained. She is not Daddy's girlfriend. Good. I would not like her anyway, Rochelle joked. Oh, but she is married to your old boyfriend Tommy, Jared added, as he lowered Kathleen to the floor of Rochelle's parents' living room. Hey boy, how are you? Francis Exposito greeted his former son-in-law. I'm good, Mr. Exposito, and you? Jared replied. Tommy, he got married? You are joking, Rochelle said, surprised. No, ma'am, Jared smiled. He kissed his girls goodbye, waved to Rochelle's mother, and then left the house. He knew that Dead End had much better hamburgers than McDonald's, and unlike McDonald's, he could also enjoy a cold drink while watching some lively entertainment. Feeling satisfied after eating, Anne Huval drove to her mother-in-law's house, making sure to grab her briefcase and laptop before locking her car. Then she let herself in. She had worked with Ronnie Edwards, her mentor, when they gave a talk at Seigel's Recycling. The 40 or so employees looked uninterested as they made their presentation. They only asked about what Seigel's was offering. "It is a 50-50 split," Ronnie explained kindly. "For the basic dental plan, it would be $9.14 from each paycheck, and Seigel's matches that amount." Anne's job was to hand out packets to the indifferent employees. At the end of the presentation, she stood waiting for anyone to ask her for help. Tommy was among that group. The young man had filled out the basic coverage form and handed it to Anne with a smile. She blushed when he looked at her, and she was surprised when he boldly asked her for a date. Thomas Huval, Jr. had dark, curly hair, warm brown eyes, and a strong face. He was a bit heavier but looked like he had played sports. Their date was dinner at Manny's Mexican restaurant, followed by miniature golf. During dinner, Anne shared that she had grown up in foster care. Her mother had difficult choices in her life, and her father was not in the picture. He told her it was just him and his mother living in the small home where he had spent his entire life. "I feel like I've known you forever," Tommy said. "Me too," Anne agreed. As Anne walked into the small house, she felt like she didn't really know her husband at all. They had married after just a few days of knowing each other. Soon after, Tommy lost his job at the recycling center. Tommy reassured Anne that he would find work soon. He promised they would save money, move out of his mother's home, and have a place of their own. Tommy made many promises, but Anne had not seen him take any steps to keep them. "Hey, there's my beautiful bride," Tommy called out. Anne sighed. It sounded like he had been drinking again. She hoped he would be too tired to want to be close. "And there's my handsome husband," Anne said, forcing a smile. Anne noticed Chloe Huval, Tommy's mother, giving her a disapproving look. Although Anne greeted her, Chloe ignored her. "Do you know a guy named Jared Broussard?" Anne asked Tommy. "That guy?" Tommy laughed, draining his can of beer. "Yeah, I know him." He didn't ask why she was curious, and Anne decided not to press the topic further. The next morning, Jared briefly thought about the nice young woman they had met the night before. Then he checked his schedule at work. Since it wasn't his weekend to have his kids, Jared agreed to go on a rig to do some emergency repairs. He packed his gear and drove to the industrial canal, where he was directed to the boat that would take him to the platform. While Jared watched the sunrise over the Gulf of Mexico, Anne was trying to get dressed quietly. Chloe Huval had many complaints about Anne and didn't hesitate to voice them. "Are you looking for a job today, dear?" Anne asked Tommy as she slipped on her shoes. "I'm looking every day," Tommy replied, not telling the truth. At her workplace, Anne focused on her tasks for the day. One thing she really disliked was making cold calls. As her coworker Ronnie had suggested, if she did that first, she could relax for the rest of the day. "Don't put it off until last. It will just hang over your head all day," Ronnie had said. After making several calls, she finally got an appointment. The owner of the bar agreed to have all the employees there for a meeting the next morning. "How many? I'll bring some donuts," Anne promised. "There's a donut shop in Paulton. Almost as good, I promise." "Let's see, 20, no, just hired the second shift cook, and there are 3 new dancers, so 24, Rosie, the owner of Dead End Bar, said. "You did it! Oh, I need to come along to make sure you do this right," Ronnie Edwards congratulated Anne when she shared the news. Why?" Anne asked. "Because Dead End has some of the most beautiful women in DeGard," Elizabeth Kutra, the manager at Young Insurance, said. "Congratulations, by the way. Many people have tried to get a job there. How did you manage it?" "I just asked," Anne replied honestly. "I called them and asked." "Seriously, I want to come along," Ronnie said. "They will be dressed, Ronnie," Elizabeth joked. "You can't be sure of that," Ronnie joked back. That night, during dinner, Anne shared her success. Tommy said he wanted to join her. Anne shook her head but smiled broadly. Miss Chloe and Tommy had already finished 18 beers from a case. Dinner was leftovers, and the television was playing an old sitcom. "So, how did the job search go today?" Anne asked Tommy while she chewed through the overcooked meal. Huh? Oh, it went well, yeah. Kendrick's Engineering said they might be looking for someone soon. Tommy lied. They said that last week, didn't they? Anne inquired. Did you try that soap place? Yeah, they aren't hiring, Tommy lied. He had drunk too much for anything intimate, but he still asked for something else. Anne felt uneasy as she tried to help him, but she quickly lost her appetite at the unpleasant smell. Tommy, when was the last time you cleaned up? She exclaimed. His reaction was harsh, and it hurt her feelings. Forget it. I'm not in the mood anymore, Tommy growled, pulling his clothes back up. Good. I'm not in the mood either, she shot back. The next morning, Anne hoped her card would work when she bought 4 dozen Tornado donuts. Tommy had used it recently for a repair on his Dodge Challenger, but didn't keep the receipt. At the bar, Anne smiled at the staff. It was a lively place with dancing, but it felt clean and welcoming, with the smell of food instead of smoke and spills. Most of the employees were sharp and involved, asking good questions. A few times, Anne turned to Ronnie for help, but mostly she led the presentation herself. My card is included with every packet, and I will leave a few extra with Rosie. If you have any questions, we're here to help, Anne assured the employees. Have you heard about how some insurance companies just want your money and never offer real help? Young Insurance is good, or I wouldn't be working with them. My card isn't working, Tommy snapped when Anne called to tell him her good news. She had signed up 14 out of the 21 employees who had come to the presentation. What were you trying to buy? Anne asked. I told you, I needed a water pump, Tommy replied harshly. I thought you already replaced that, Anne said. He hung up on her. What? He yelled when she called back. We got cut off. I wanted to see if you wanted to go to Tommy's po' boy place, Anne said. And how am I getting there? I need the pump, Tommy said angrily. Forget it, Anne sighed. When Anne checked her bank account, she realized she didn't have enough money to go to the sandwich shop. A recent charge had left her with just $4.19. Anne, Grant and I are going to Salad Lights. Our wives want us to eat healthier, Ronnie said. That's why I keep some beef jerky in my desk, Grant added. We'd love for you to join us. It's on us. You did a great job at that presentation, Ronnie said. On Wednesday afternoon, Anne looked at the clock, thanked the employees of Stolzel's Shoes, and left. She hadn't signed any sales clerks, but Tom Stolzel had talked to her about getting homeowners insurance. And if I combine homeowners and auto? Tom asked. So she had one sale, though it didn't feel like much. She got into her car and smiled tightly. Miss Chloe would be upset to find out she had filled up Anne's gas tank that morning. That would teach the grumpy woman to let her son use her gas card. Anne had taken it from his wallet while he was sleeping. What Miss Chloe cooked the night before had given Anne terrible heartburn, and there was still plenty of it left. McDonald's, here I come, Anne said. Jared stood in the playground area of McDonald's. Both Kathleen and Gloria were having fun, so he didn't hurry them. They're having a good time, Anne said. Hey, how's it going? Jared asked, clearly happy to see her. Good, you? Anne replied, smiling up at him. Yeah, I just got in last night, Jared said. Anne didn't mind when Jared bought her a Big Mac meal and 2 Happy Meals for the girls. Aren't you eating? Anne asked. Dead Ends has ice-cold drinks and a burger that will definitely give me heartburn, Jared said with a smile. You don't drink much, right? Anne asked. Huh? No, just 1 or 2. The last thing I need is trouble, Jared said. What's that mean? Gloria asked. It's when you drive when you shouldn't, Jared explained to his daughter. So how about another one? A couple of years before you can get your driver's license, you're not worried about that right now. Daddy, you said I couldn't drive until I was 100, Gloria reminded her dad. No, I said you can't have any boyfriends until you're 100, Jared smiled back. Daddy, Anne said with a light laugh. Okay, 99. Is that better? Jared asked, grinning at Anne. Daddy, no, Anne replied, giving him a playful smile. How old do you have to be to drive? Gloria asked. 16, and you're 5 now, Jared explained. So how long is that? Gloria pondered. All right, 16 and you're 5 now, so take 5 away from 16, Jared encouraged her. 11, Gloria guessed. Very good, Jared cheered. Just for that, you get an extra kiss, okay? Okay. Gloria cheered back. I spent my weekend with them, Jared shared with his new friend. Fridays are for fish sticks and macaroni and cheese. But on Saturday, we have lunch here. Then we go to Chuck E. Cheese for dinner. You can come, Gloria invited Anne. Do you think my husband would let me? Anne smiled at Gloria. He can come too, Gloria decided. Oh, I don't think he likes Chuck E. Cheese, Anne said. What? No way! Everyone likes Chuck E. Cheese, Gloria insisted. Daddy's new girlfriend is going to Chuck E. Cheese with us, Gloria told her mom when Jared dropped them off. Gloria, sweetheart, Mrs. Huval is not Daddy's girlfriend, Jared said. Oh, by the way, I found out Tommy is married, Rochelle said. It's on his Facebook page. I told you, but I guess it's not real unless it's on Facebook, right? Jared smiled and kissed his girls. Oh, and someone has a dentist appointment tomorrow, Rochelle said, pointing to Gloria. They're covered by my dental plan, Jared reminded Rochelle. I have the card in my purse, Rochelle replied. Oh, in your purse? Well, then we'll never find it, Jared jokingly said. That's right, Frances agreed. Both of you be quiet, Rochelle said sharply. Bye, girls, Jared said, giving each of the girls another kiss. Anne didn't meet them at McDonald's for lunch on Saturday. She didn't show up at the pizza place for dinner that evening. Jared hadn't expected the young woman to join them. She was married, and unlike his ex-wife, Anne seemed like the kind of woman who would take marriage seriously. On Sunday morning, Jared took Gloria and Kathleen to church. They went to St. Richard's Catholic Church in Degard, Louisiana, even though St. Elizabeth's by the lake was closer. St. Richard's had a nicer spot for children. Anne and Tommy were sitting in one of the pews. Anne appeared happy while Tommy looked a bit tired. When Tommy saw Jared walking toward the children's area, he smirked and nudged Anne, pointing at Jared. Is that the guy you were talking about? He asked Anne, indicating Jared. At McDonald's? Yes, Anne confirmed. He goes there with his daughters every Wednesday. They're not his daughters, Tommy scoffed. Huh? Yes, they are, Anne said. No, they aren't, Tommy replied with a grin. Chad? Remember him from a few months ago? He's the father of the older girl, and I'm the father of the baby. That's awful, Anne exclaimed. She glanced at the closed door of the cry room. The room was made of tinted glass, so it was impossible to see inside. Does he know? Anne asked in a shocked whisper. Uh-huh. He even took us to court for custody. What a fool, Tommy laughed. He took you to court for the girls? Anne asked, looking at the glass door again. Yeah, can you believe that? Tommy chuckled. What a silly thing to do, right? But at least I don't have to pay child support. Anne stayed silent, still staring at the door. A few more people came into the room, mostly women with small children. One tired-looking older man entered, bringing a young woman who needed special care. I don't want to go, the young woman grumbled. I know, but they need your help, remember? The man encouraged her. Hi, Julie, Gloria greeted the young woman. Hi, Kathleen echoed. Look, Gloria and Kathleen are here, their father said. Others also greeted her. The father looked relieved, happy to have a break for an hour. Tommy was eager to leave the church as soon as the deacon announced the end of the service. Anne sang along with the hymn, enjoying the choir's performance. And here, Julie, a quarter, Jared said, offering the young woman a small token for her help. How about that, huh? Her father smiled, nodding in thanks to the young man. Hi, Miss Huval, Gloria shouted when she saw a woman she recognized. Hi, Anne, Tommy, Jared greeted them. Well, hello, Gloria, Kathleen. Do you both come here too? Anne asked the young girls. She looked closely at Gloria. The girl had blonde hair and big blue eyes, while her husband had brown hair and darker piggish eyes. The older girl didn't seem to resemble Tommy much, even with her brown hair and eyes. Anne remembered that Tommy had mentioned Chad Theriot was Gloria's father. But to Anne, she could see Jared's features in both girls. They were warm and friendly, especially Gloria, who had a bright smile. Hey, Broussard, Tommy nodded, trying to hurry Anne toward the church doors. In her Toyota, Tommy took the driver's seat. Anne glanced at him. He muttered impatiently. They were stuck behind a line of minivans. If Anne hadn't taken her time singing that hymn, they would have been halfway home by now. They were married when you were with his wife? Anne suddenly asked as she spotted Jared's pickup truck. Who? Tommy responded, then swore when Jared somehow got in front of them. Great, now we missed our chance. Jared's wife, Anne explained. Did you know she was married when you were with her? Yeah, Tommy laughed. What a mistake. Tommy, Anne replied, slightly shocked. That's not kind calling her that, Anne said. He's working offshore welding hard and we're over at her place having a good time, Tommy chuckled, recalling his past experience with Rochelle Esposito Broussard. Anne wanted to respond but decided against it. As she looked at Tommy, she felt more unsure. The longer she spent with him, the more she realized he was not the person she thought she knew. At Manny's Golf-A-Rama, it felt like they had been friends forever. Tommy insisted there was a bond between them. Anne was unaware that Tommy had a problem with drinking and was the kind of person who would cross boundaries. Finally, it's about time, right? Tommy sighed as they drove onto the street. You just came from church and you're using that language? Anne teased him. On Wednesday morning, Anne got ready for work. Tommy hardly noticed her leaving. During her coffee break at work, Anne bumped into J.C. Kay, the receptionist at Young Insurance. A splash of coffee landed on Anne's light-colored blouse. Both women gasped, apologized, and tried to clean up the mess. I better head home before I grab a bite at Mama's Po' Boys, huh? Anne said cheerfully. Good luck with that. Even Grant had a tough time there, Ronnie replied. Yeah, but I think I'm cuter than Grant, Anne joked. That's not saying much. Everyone is cuter than Grant, Ronnie laughed. Hey, Ronnie, are you free later? Want to hang out? Grant joked. While driving home, Anne tried to keep a steady pace. She frowned when she saw Tommy's newly repaired Challenger still parked in the same spot. Clearly, he had forgotten his promise to look for work that morning. Suddenly, Anne heard loud voices coming from inside her home. Oh no, she thought, feeling uneasy. She quietly made her way down the hall to their bedroom. Inside, she was shocked to see a woman, Chloe Huval, in a compromising position with Tommy. Anne stood in disbelief. Needless to say, she quickly took out her cell phone to capture the moment. Hi, everyone, she said. Chloe gasped in surprise, and Tommy turned to look at Anne. She snapped a few pictures and hurried out of the house. Coffee-stained blouse or not, Anne managed to close 2 sales that afternoon. But Mama's Po' Boys chose not to go with Young Insurance. Like I said, even Grant couldn't sell to them, Ronnie told Anne. Yeah, but their oyster po' boy is amazing, Anne replied. That afternoon, Anne sat at her desk feeling aimless. She had finished her sales paperwork, checked that her new bank account at First Union had her latest paycheck, and made sure her old account at DeGard National Bank was closed. She didn't let Tommy have access to her new bank account. She kept her debit card hidden in her laptop case. Tommy had complained about the old account being closed and got upset when Anne pointed out he had emptied it without adding any money. Mrs. Huval? We're getting ready to leave now, Leah Farmer, another agent, said, bringing Anne back to reality. Anne looked around. They were the last ones there. Tired, she nodded and got up. She decided to go to McDonald's. After that, she wasn't sure where she would go. Gloria and Kathleen were in the McDonald's playground area. Anne smiled and parked her car. McDonald's in Paulton didn't have anything like this, Anne said. Hey, Jared said. The one in Baylor Lake didn't either. Not that my mom ever stopped by there anyway. Hi, Miss Huval, Gloria called as she crawled through a tube. Hi, Kathleen said cheerfully. Hi, Anne replied. Yeah, my mom was the kind who expected you to eat what she made. If you didn't, you just weren't hungry, Jared said. Can I talk to you? Anne asked suddenly. Yeah, over here, Jared replied. Jared sat down, and Anne took a seat a little away from him, gathering her thoughts. I spilled coffee on my shirt, Anne said finally. She pointed to a small stain on her shirt. Jared looked at it. I wanted to change my clothes, but then I came home and found my husband being inappropriate with his mother, Anne said, her voice shaky. Jared's eyes widened and his mouth dropped open. Wait, I mean he was with his own mother? Jared whispered. Yeah, can you believe it? Anne asked. What did you do? Jared inquired. Well, after I stopped feeling sick, Anne replied. Daddy, are you ready? Gloria called, running over. Yeah, sweetheart. Let's go get our Happy Meals, Jared said, picking up both girls to head toward the door. Anne stood up. We'll talk more later, Jared said. Unless you're in a hurry? I have nowhere to go, Anne replied simply. Jared bought Anne a Big Mac combo meal along with Happy Meals for Gloria and Kathleen. While he helped the girls get settled with their meals, Anne watched them closely. Tommy had told her he was Kathleen's father, while Chad Theriot, a friend from school, was said to be Gloria's dad. Anne looked around but couldn't see Chad or Tommy in the two girls. Jared seemed like a caring man, and if he knew he wasn't their father, he didn't let it show. "What happened back there?" Jared asked, glancing at Gloria and Kathleen, who were busy playing. "I didn't do anything, I just turned around and left," Anne replied. "As you can see, I didn't even change my shirt." Jared's gaze dropped to her shirt before he watched her take a bite of her Big Mac. "Are you going back?" he asked. She shook her head. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I came here from a terrible boarding house. Mrs. Duvalier was so strict with her rules. Then I got married to Tommy and we thought we'd get our own place, but that never happened. Now I have nowhere to go," Anne said sadly. "I have an extra room at my house," Jared offered. He took the French fries that Kathleen handed him and made funny biting noises, making the girls squeal with laughter. Anne joined in, helping to lighten the mood as she pretended her fries were being chased by a monster. "No, don't eat my fingers," Kathleen shouted playfully when Jared joked about them looking like fries. "I'm not going to eat her fingers," Anne said firmly but with a smile. Anne asked quietly, "So, about that room, do you expect anything special in return?" "I'm just being a guy, but no, Anne, I wouldn't ask that of you," Jared assured her. "Promise?" she asked, needing to hear it. "Promise," he replied. "I'll even do a pinky swear if you want." Gloria declared she was done with her fries and held them out dramatically. "Yum! And those fingers look like fries, too," Jared said playfully. "No, those are your fingers, not fries," Gloria shot back. Okay, I won't eat them," Jared laughed. "See you all next Wednesday," the manager called as they left the restaurant. Anne followed Jared to Rochelle's house and waited in her car while he took his girls inside. Rochelle greeted him at the door. She had the same light hair as Kathleen and seemed very friendly, laughing and touching Jared lightly as they talked. Anne watched Jared's face as he left his daughters behind. He looked heavy-hearted. "No, Tommy Huval, you're not the kind of man to be that little girl's father," Anne thought to herself angrily. Then she followed Jared to his small home. Inside, the living room and kitchen were simply filled with comfortable furniture, showing it wasn't about style, but about being cozy. The children's room had 2 beds shaped like princesses, a nice desk, a chest of drawers, and a dresser. Their toys were in a big toy box, and their clothes were neatly hung in the closet. "Wow, it's so tidy in here," Anne said, looking around. "Yeah, Kathleen had to clean it up before we could leave," Jared replied. The room Anne would use was simple. The furniture didn't match or have much style. There was a small bed covered with a patchwork quilt. "I don't remember the last time those sheets were washed," Jared said. "Can I throw my shirt in the wash too?" Anne asked, indicating a stain on her shirt. "Sure, let's get your clothes and things," Jared replied, glancing at her shirt. "Will you come with me?" Anne pleaded. Jared smiled a little, but he knew it might not be a good idea. He and Thomas Huval Jr. had not gotten along in the past. He was confident he could handle Tommy, but he knew Tommy wouldn't play fair. "Actually, Anne, it might be better to get the police to help you," Jared suggested. They drove to the DeGard Police Department, where Sergeant Leanne Pyle was ready to assist them. "Okay, call him and let him know you're coming for your things," Leanne said after filling out some paperwork. "What are you doing?" Tommy growled on the phone. "I'm at the police department," Anne replied. "Oh, great, what did you do now?" Tommy snapped. "I didn't do anything," Anne said. "But I'm getting my clothes, all right?" "No, it's not all right," Tommy said. "Tommy, those are my clothes. You can't stop me from getting them," Anne argued. "Just try," Tommy challenged. "Looks like this is going to be interesting," Leanne said. Captain Bob Chastain assigned Officer Brian Jochet to go along with them. Brian was fit and had played football in high school, unlike Tommy. Jared warned Leanne and Brian about his past issues with Tommy. They all agreed that it would be best for Brian to stay with Tommy while Leanne went with Anne to pick up her things. Jared would wait outside the Huval home with his truck. "Does he know where you are?" Brian asked Jared. "Officer, this is Baylor Lake. Everyone knows where everyone is," Jared said with a tight smile. "Oh, Jared, I didn't think about that," Anne exclaimed. "It's fine," Jared assured her. "Then maybe it's best if you just head home. We will get everything into the cruiser," Leanne said, making it clear this was not just a suggestion. Almost 40 minutes later, Leanne helped Anne carry her 3 bags of clothes into Jared's home. The friendly red-headed officer nodded when Jared placed the freshly washed sheets on Anne's bed. "You are in good hands," she told Anne. "You are much better off now." "So, what happened?" Jared asked after Leanne left. "He got loud and unruly," Anne said. "I'm tired and I need to freshen up. Where's the bathroom?" "Right there. The Big Bird bottle is bubble bath, okay?" Jared replied. Anne laughed and found a robe in one of her bags. "I'm going to take a long, hot shower, then I'm heading to bed," she said. "Good night." "Good night," Jared replied. The next morning, Anne walked into the kitchen looking a bit messy from sleep. Her choice of attire was a short, snugged shirt and fuzzy pink socks. "Oatmeal is on the stove. I added raisins and pecans," Jared said, squeezing himself under the table. "Where are the bowls?" Anne asked. "They're in the cabinet by the stove. Spoons are in the drawer next to the refrigerator. That's just where my mom always left them," Jared explained. "This is great. Miss Chloe never made this," Anne said as she took a seat at the table. "That's fine for now, but when the girls are here, that's Gloria's seat," Jared said with a smile. "Oh, where do you want me then?" Anne asked. "Next seat down," Jared replied. "When they aren't here, that's okay, but Kathleen gets upset if things aren't just right." Anne slid one seat over. Jared wished she hadn't. The light showed off her shirt more than he expected. "Mm-hmm," Anne said happily as she ate her oatmeal. "Before I forget, here are your keys," Jared said, sliding a set across the table. "You need to get to the shop by 7. Not sure when you need to leave." "Thanks," Anne said. "You're welcome," Jared said, trying to focus on something else. "Coffee is good too," Anne complimented. "Just make sure to turn the pot off before you leave," Jared suggested, and decided it was best to step outside for a moment. When Anne entered the office, the receptionist, JCK, handed her a piece of paper. JC's usual friendly smile was replaced with a look of frustration. "If your husband calls me anything like that again, I'll call the police," JC said in a soft voice. "I can't deal with that." "Did he call you that?" "You should call the police now," Anne replied, tossing the paper into the trash. She walked to her desk, sighed, and picked up the phone. Hoping for a good outcome, Anne dialed the number. "About time," Tommy said sharply. "I told her she doesn't have to lie to protect you." "She wasn't lying, Tommy. I just got here," Anne explained. "Now what do you all want?" "Okay, fine, you win," Tommy said sharply. "You win, now come home." "I win? What did I win?" Anne asked, confused. "Whatever little game you're playing," Tommy replied. "Oh my God, I saw you all behaving badly, and you think this is okay? Tommy, I think you've lost it," Anne exclaimed. "Don't call here again, got it?" Feeling upset, Anne still managed to book appointments with T-Dan's quick repair service and the Acapulco Grande Mexican restaurant in Pinoak, Louisiana. "I dislike making cold calls," Anne told Ronnie. "But you're right. Getting them done is better. They won't hang over you all day." At T-Dan's, located in a trailer in Jacks Creek, Louisiana, Anne spoke with Danny Boudreau and 2 women named Darlene and Hillary. Since they all had the same last name, Anne couldn't figure out if they were related as family or if one was his wife and the other his daughter. Both young women called him Daddy and leaned against him, looking quite comfortable. A cockatoo squawked loudly at Anne the whole time she discussed insurance plans with them. As she finished her presentation, 2 babies started crying loudly. Anne sighed as Darlene and Hillary quickly picked them up to care for them. "There are few things more beautiful, huh?" Danny smiled proudly. "Miss Dumont, I think we'll go with that health plan, bundling it for my 3 workers." "3 workers?" Anne grinned. "Yep, Darlene is the accountant," Danny shared. "Hillary's in charge of paperwork and I do all the hard work," he joked. "Let's get it started," Anne said, watching the 2 mothers. "I'm in charge of paperwork?" Hillary exclaimed, tossing her long blonde hair back. "And when did she get a promotion?" Darlene teased. "Just my luck," Hillary replied playfully. "Whatever," Darlene said, and they both laughed. When Anne returned to the office, she learned that the police had been called on her husband for bothering JCK. "Why doesn't he just—" Anne began, looking at her phone. She noticed the battery was dead and wondered how long it had been that way. Sitting at her desk, she continued staring at the screen. I probably left the charger in the drawer, Anne muttered. Did you get that at PC Nation? Ronnie asked. They should have replacements. Anne looked up. Ronnie smiled kindly and shrugged. A couple of years ago, I went through a divorce, he said softly. It's surprising how many little things you forget when you leave the house and then you realize you really need them. Is it that obvious? Anne asked softly. Pretty much, Ronnie replied. See you both tomorrow, Anne said as she stood up. Hey, can you make us some chicken and rice, please? Jared called out when Anne walked into the cozy home. She wanted to say no because Mrs. Chloe had made a chicken and rice dish that didn't sit well with her. The woman used lower quality chicken and didn't prepare it properly. But she was hungry. Anne noticed that Jared's chicken and rice smelled way better than Mrs. Chloe's. Let me change out of these clothes first, Anne called back. Oh boy, Jared replied. A moment later, Anne realized what Jared's words implied and let out a little squeal. That's not what I meant, she shouted from her bedroom. She smiled when she heard Jared laugh. Anne pulled on a loose t-shirt, feeling confident that it would cover her well. She sifted through her bags and found her Paulton High School gym shorts. She wasn't a fan of the gray and white colors, but the shorts were comfy. She chose not to wear anything underneath them for added comfort. Did you have a good day? Jared asked while he covered the skillet. Yeah, it tastes different from Mrs. Chloe's, Anne said. Well, I'm not her, Jared replied. Right, you're way more fun, Anne agreed. Oh, thank you, Jared said with a playful grin. What can I do to help? Anne asked. Could you load up the dishwasher? Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes, Jared said. They sat at the kitchen table with cans of soda. Anne shared stories about her day, and Jared listened closely. After a bit, he checked the skillet and dished out their meal. This is amazing, Anne said, enjoying the hot food. Careful, it's hot, Jared advised. Want some hot sauce with that? Hot sauce? Anne asked. Only the best kind allowed in this house, Jared said with a smile. They enjoyed their meal together. After they finished, Anne leaned against him as he loaded the dishwasher. Do you have a microwave at work? Jared asked, while reaching for some storage containers. I can pack you a lunch you'll like. Oh, yes, Anne said excitedly. She gave him a cheerful hug, which made him feel a bit flustered. Still, he packed a generous portion into a container and showed her where it was going in the fridge. Then he filled another container with the leftovers. On Thursday, do you like that show, The Big Bang Theory? Anne asked. Yeah, Jared replied. He settled into his recliner while she flopped down on the long couch. Even though the show was a repeat, they both enjoyed it. I really miss Mike and Molly, Anne said. Jared glanced over and noticed that her shorts had ridden up a bit. He found her cute. Yeah, Jared replied, admiring her. I'm probably going offshore tomorrow. Chris had Alan booked, but knowing Alan, he might call in sick, Jared explained. I'll text you if that happens, okay? Is it dangerous? Anne asked, turning to face him. When she turned, Jared got a brief glimpse of her hair. It caught him off guard for a moment. Yeah, I do underwater welding, so sort of, Jared managed to reply. He gave Anne a quick kiss on the lips as he wished her a good night. Then he went to his bathroom to relax, thinking about his time with Anne. Alan did end up calling in sick. Jared smiled and texted Anne that he was headed offshore for about 4 or 5 days. Be careful, Eiley, she responded. Eiley, he typed back. I love you, she clarified. Oh, I lie too, he replied. The girls? Anne texted shortly after. Not my weekend, Jared answered. He smiled when she sent a sad face emoji. That was how he felt when it wasn't his turn with the kids. Jared was gone for 4 days and returned on Tuesday. He sent Anne a text to let her know he was back on land and would be home when she finished work. I lie, she replied with a smiley face. I lie too, he wrote back. Jared realized he appreciated having someone to talk to and someone who noticed when he was away, someone who was happy to see him return. When he walked into his bedroom, he found a pile of clean clothes on his bed. The floor looked as if someone had vacuumed. The towel he had hung over the shower was gone, as was the washcloth from the faucet. The mirror was clean too. Someone's been busy, Jared noted. The hall bathroom sparkled and the kitchen was spotless. Yep, someone's been really busy, Jared smiled. He emptied his duffel bag of clothes onto the floor of the laundry room, then checked all the pockets. After he was sure they were empty, he started his laundry. His phone chimed. "Hello?" he answered. "Are you hungry?" Anne's cheerful voice asked. "I could eat," Jared replied. "How about Acapulco Grande? It's in Pinoac," Anne suggested. "I have a presentation tomorrow and wanted to check it out first." "Are you there now?" Jared inquired. "No, I'm at the office," Anne replied. "Let me take a quick shower and I'll pick you up," Jared said. He didn't take long, even though his mind wandered to the thought of Anne cleaning his tub. 20 minutes later, Jared was backing out of his driveway. "Almost forgot what it's like to be with a man who has his own truck." Anne smiled as Jared opened the passenger door for her. "Man, I'm not like Tommy anymore," Jared thought to himself. At the restaurant, he helped Anne out of the truck and she held onto his arm as they walked inside. She kept holding his arm even as they waited for their table, making Jared feel a bit flattered. "By the way, thanks for cleaning the house. You didn't have to do that," Jared said as they looked over the menu. "Well, how much rent are you going to charge me?" Anne asked. "Nothing," Jared replied. "My mom didn't charge me when it was her house." The meal was average, typical Tex-Mex with smaller portions but higher prices. "Thank you, but I'm the one who invited you," Anne said when Jared paid for the meal. "Yeah, I know," Jared smiled. On the drive back, they passed a local spa, both glancing at the small, squat building. Jared often visited a massage parlor in a nearby town when he needed to relax. The spa had a few women working there who provided massages, and Jared sometimes went there for a quiet, calming experience, finding a break from his everyday routine. The women were always polite, and Jared made a mental note to visit again sometime soon. Anne, on the other hand, thought about reaching out to the spa for business, wondering if they might be interested in some insurance coverage. "Thanks again, but I was the one who invited you," Anne said, as Jared pulled up to the insurance office where she worked. "You're welcome," Jared replied. Anne leaned over and gave him a quick kiss on the lips. Then when he helped her down from the truck, she gave him another playful kiss. "See you tonight," she said cheerfully before hurrying into the office. "Ooh, I saw that," teased her coworker JCK in a high-pitched voice. "You were kissing your boyfriend." Anne giggled, checked her mail, and hurried down the hall with a smile. Later, Jared decided to head to the spa. He paid for a relaxing massage, allowing himself to unwind from the day. It was just what he needed, a chance to let go of stress and feel at ease before heading back home. When he was ready, she put on a protection and settled onto him. "Oh, you are good. You are a great lover," she sang as she moved up and down. She smiled when Jared reached up and played with her small chest. She didn't really feel pleasure, but made some soft sounds as they connected. "Okay, go gently. You are too big," she encouraged after putting on a fresh protection. Jared thought about whether Anne liked other types of intimacy. His ex-wife, Rochelle, had said she didn't like certain things. Rochelle had been uncomfortable with those things with Tommy. Tommy thought it should be easy, but he didn't understand how things worked. Jared had always been careful and gentle with Rochelle. By the time things were finished, she was okay with it. "Oh, you are so good," Anne said as he moved. "Uh-huh," Jared replied, not really believing her. He gave her a tip before leaving, feeling satisfied. Then he stopped at the grocery store on his way home. Lasagna. I haven't made a good one in a while, Jared thought. Anne came home just as Jared was finishing up the lasagna. "Oh boy, lasagna," Anne said when she heard what was for dinner. "Let me change." "You keep saying that, but I haven't seen it yet," Jared joked. "That's not what I mean." Anne laughed and kissed him softly. She wore her big t-shirt and gym shorts again. They each had a beer and talked about their day. "Are you thinking about getting a divorce from Tommy?" Jared asked. "Yeah," Anne said, looking down. She met Jared's eyes and he gave her a warm smile, making her nod. "Yeah, I know I'm not very pretty," Anne said. "What? Who told you that?" Jared asked, surprised. "Everyone," Anne replied. "Well, they are all wrong," Jared said firmly. "And I know I'm not that smart," Anne continued. "Come on, really?" Jared said. "You graduated early and have a job. How can you say that?" "But I know I shouldn't have married Tommy," Anne said, finishing her beer. "That guy is something else." "True words," Jared agreed. "And how do you treat girls? Do you really care about them?" That's how I want to be treated, Anne said. That's how I would treat you, Jared replied quickly. You're already treating me like that, Anne said after a moment of silence. Yeah, well, Jared said, focusing on the lasagna, which was almost ready. I don't know why, but whenever my mom made lasagna, she always served it with a can of peas, Jared said. I asked her last time I made it, and she said she wasn't sure why she started that, but lasagna always means peas. Why are you so nervous? Anne asked. What do you mean? Jared chuckled awkwardly. Is it because of what you said? Anne asked quietly. Yeah, Jared confessed after a moment. Anne didn't respond. When Jared glanced at her, he noticed that she was blushing. They enjoyed their meal in silence. Whenever one of them tried to speak, they would stop and look away. Afterward, Anne helped Jared clean up. He reminded her that he had just returned from a trip and was very tired. Good night, Anne said as they stood outside his bedroom door. Good night, Jared replied. She stood on her tiptoes and gave him a quick kiss. She wrapped her arms around him for a moment, then let go and walked to her own room. Good night, she called again as she closed her door. Uh-huh, Jared said. He went into the bathroom feeling overwhelmed by thoughts of his guest. In her own bedroom, Anne made sure her door was securely shut. At her previous home, the bathroom door often creaked open at the least convenient times. Once her door was firmly closed, Anne removed her shorts and lay down on her bed. She adjusted her shirt, feeling a mix of emotions. She let out softly as she tried to relax and push away her thoughts. She focused on calming herself, letting her mind wander. Just as she felt overwhelmed, she took a deep breath and tried to settle her thoughts. No, she whispered to herself, wanting to clear her mind. The next morning at breakfast, Jared reached into his jeans to get his wallet. Then he carefully went through a small pile of business cards he had taken out of his old wallet. How many cards do you have? Anne smiled as she finished the last bite of cheese grits from her bowl. And of course, here's the last one. Jared smiled as he placed a card in front of her. Penny Jones, attorney, Anne read aloud. Divorce, custody cases, she's really good, Jared said. Anyone from that firm is solid, but I really trust Miss Penny. That sounds good to me, Anne agreed. And it's Wednesday, Jared reminded her. What time are you picking them up? Anne asked. At 3. They say it will rain, Jared replied. What does that mean? Anne asked. We're going to do some finger painting, Jared said. Oh boy, Anne laughed. When she stood up on her tiptoes to kiss him at the door, Jared smiled and leaned down. She wrapped her arms around his neck and gave him a quick peck. I'll lie, she smiled. I'll eat too, Jared smiled back, kissed her again, and then left for work. Later in the shower, Anne adjusted the shower head. She enjoyed the warm water for a while, letting it flow over her. Jared Broussard, she said out loud. I didn't think I'd feel so good. At work, Anne told JCK, the receptionist, and Elizabeth Kutra, the office manager, that she would be leaving at 2:30. Elizabeth smiled and shrugged. Anne, you know you're a salesperson, right? You can come and go as you please as long as you get your work done, she said with a smile. I know, but I like to be responsible, Anne replied. Her first call was to Penny Jones's office. Penny's assistant, a young girl, made an appointment for Friday at 2. Anne thanked her and then set her jaw firmly. She didn't make any sales after 20 cold calls, but she caught up on her paperwork, filed everything neatly, and then sat quietly. Ronnie smiled as she pushed a strand of hair away from her face. Okay, here's an idea. Go through all your clients and think of ways to save them some money, he advised. Okay, she said, clicking on her desktop. Clients will remember the salesperson who saved them some money. They'll tell their friends and family about you, Ronnie encouraged. She started with the oldest files and moved slowly through them. By 2:30, she had called 7 clients and set up 3 appointments. See you tomorrow, Anne said. By the time she got home, the rain was pouring heavily. She smiled. Jared's truck was already there. Hi, Miss Anne, we're painting, Gloria happily called out. Well, hello, Anne cheerfully replied. Hey, why are you home so early? Jared asked. It's Wednesday, Anne said. She then asked him to remove a lampshade from a table lamp while she taped a sheet of paper to the kitchen wall. Gloria, what's your favorite color in the world? Anne asked. Purple, Gloria said. Blue, Kathleen added. Okay, Gloria, please sit right here and hold still, Anne instructed as she adjusted the lamp. What are you doing? Jared asked as Anne quickly traced Gloria's shadow on the white paper. All right, Daddy, put this on the refrigerator, Anne said and taped another piece of paper onto the wall. Now, Gloria, hop down and let Kathleen sit here. Anne then adjusted the 3-year-old girl and worked quickly. By the time Jared had Gloria and Kathleen cleaned up, ready to go to McDonald's for dinner, Anne had finished tracing and cutting out their silhouettes. She put the 2 cutouts into picture frames. This is for you to give to your mom, okay? Anne said. Gloria, yours is the purple one. And Kathleen, yours is the blue one. Well now, what do you say? Jared encouraged. Getting them to the truck was a challenge. Anne helped as much as she could, carrying Kathleen while trying to hold on to an umbrella. They were still a little wet by the time they reached the truck. After dinner, Anne stayed in the truck while Jared ran Gloria to the front door, and then Kathleen. He got back into the truck and made Anne jump as he shook his head, splashing her with water. Those silhouettes were really nice, Jared said. My 4th-grade teacher, Miss Traynor, showed me how to do it, Anne said simply. At home, Anne smiled as she headed to her room. Jared cleaned up the leftover paint from the kitchen table. And here are yours, Daddy, Anne said, bringing 2 more framed silhouettes into the kitchen. Aw, hey! Jared smiled as he looked at the pictures. I-L-Y, Anne said with a grin. Then she kissed him. I really L-Y, she whispered softly. Okay, Jared said, placing the 2 frames on the table. Is something wrong? Anne asked, feeling a bit uneasy. Yeah, Jared replied, unable to meet her gaze. What is it? Anne asked. Anne, it's just... Do you have any idea how hard this is? Jared said. He let out a long sigh. Anne looked at him, anxious and confused. Forget it. I'm just going to say it, he said. I want you, he declared, looking deeply into her eyes. Then what are we waiting for? Anne asked, feeling relieved and happy. He lifted her up and placed a kiss on her, then carried her to his bedroom, making her laugh as he kicked the door shut with his foot. The door shut with a loud bang, making Anne pause for a moment. This isn't right, she thought as she hesitated. You're married. Still, she removed her blouse and skirt, her mind briefly reminding her, this is a mistake. This isn't your husband. Jared quickly undressed as well, and Anne glanced at him. Unlike her husband Tommy, Jared didn't seem to have the same struggles. Tommy often needed some extra encouragement to feel close, and sometimes it took a while, especially after he'd had too much to drink. Jared stretched out on the bed and pulled Anne into his arms. Their kisses were rushed, filled with energy, as they held and touched each other. Anne was surprised by how gentle Jared was, how patient, something she wasn't used to. Jared's kisses moved across her skin, and Anne sighed softly as his lips traveled further. His touch was warm and tender, and she found herself enjoying the closeness. It was different from what she had experienced before, and for a moment, she let herself relax into the moment. They shared a connection that felt new, and Jared's affection made her feel wanted in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. His kindness and gentle nature were a welcome change from what she was used to, and Anne couldn't help but feel thankful for the moment they shared. Though her thoughts occasionally reminded her of the wrongness of the situation, she focused on the tenderness Jared showed her. As the night went on, it became clear that their time together wasn't just physical, it was filled with a quiet understanding between them, a bond that seemed to form in that brief time. It wasn't something she could easily explain, but it made her feel seen and cared for. Jared had a way of making her feel at ease, and though she knew the situation was complicated, for now, she let herself enjoy the warmth and kindness he offered. Anne could feel Jared's excitement as they continued their intimate moment, but her thoughts were racing. She was overwhelmed by sensations, caught between hesitation and enjoyment. Jared's touch was different from anything she'd experienced before. He was gentle but confident. As they moved together, Anne couldn't help but compare this experience to her past. With Tommy, things had always felt rushed and uncomfortable. He never took the time to be attentive or considerate. Jared, on the other hand, made her feel cared for, ensuring she was comfortable and at ease. It was a new feeling for her, one that left her surprised. Anne gasped softly as Jared kissed her, his hands tracing over her back. The closeness between them deepened as they shared the quiet, tender moments. Jared was patient, and she appreciated how he seemed to understand what she needed, focusing on her comfort and connection rather than rushing anything. Their shared moments were filled with warmth and affection, and Anne found herself letting go of her worries, if only for a while. Jared's soft words and gentle laughter helped ease her into the moment. For the first time in a long while, she felt valued in a relationship that wasn't just about the physical, but about genuine care and respect. As they lay together afterward, the world outside felt far away. Anne knew their situation was complicated, but she appreciated how Jared made her feel seen and respected. Their relationship wasn't built on the intensity of their physical connection, but on a deeper understanding, something she hadn't realized she was missing until now. The quiet moments between them were filled with peace, and Anne smiled softly to herself, feeling grateful for the kindness and warmth Jared had shown her. Anne lay on top of Jared, her body trembling slightly. Jared held her close, his touch gentle but firm, as they shared a quiet moment of intimacy. The connection between them was deep, but it wasn't rushed or intense, just the two of them being close and comfortable together. Anne whispered to Jared, feeling a mix of emotions, and he chuckled softly in response, their playful banter adding a lightness to the moment. As they spent time together, Jared reached for a small tube of lotion from his nightstand. It had been a while since he last used it, but he wanted to make sure Anne was comfortable and at ease. Anne shifted slightly, turning to face Jared, and their closeness deepened. Jared gently applied the lotion, making sure to keep things comfortable and relaxed. Their connection wasn't just physical, it was about trust and care. Jared's movements were slow and careful, always checking to make sure Anne felt comfortable. They laughed softly, their conversation light-hearted as they continued to enjoy each other's company. Anne adjusted her position, and Jared smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment. They shared more quiet moments, moving together in a way that felt natural and easy. As Jared continued to make sure Anne was at ease, he placed his hand on her back, reassuring her with a gentle touch. The room was filled with warmth and understanding, and Anne's smile reflected the comfort she felt. Jared made sure to take his time, being thoughtful and considerate, and Anne appreciated the tenderness he showed. Their bond grew stronger as the night went on, filled with soft laughter and kind words. Both Jared and Anne felt the importance of these moments, cherishing the simplicity and warmth they shared together. He then wrapped his arm around her waist and used his other hand to tease her. "Aye!" she shouted, surprised, and reacted without warning. "Ah!" He grunted and felt overwhelmed. They moved together, each wanting to feel closer, sharing a moment. Eventually, he paused, feeling a change. They lay on the bed, both out of breath. Then she shifted slightly and rested her head on his chest. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her in. "Is it too soon to say I love you?" she asked softly. "What does I lie mean?" he replied, curious. "No, I mean, Jared, I really think I'm in love with you," she said, looking into his eyes. She kissed him for a moment, then pulled back to meet his gaze. "We just shared something special," he said, looking back. "That felt really meaningful to me." Suddenly, she sprang up. "Oh, I need to!" she exclaimed and hurried out of the bed. She initially thought about running to the door, but quickly changed course and went to his bathroom, slamming the seat down behind her. Jared waited until he heard the flush before entering the bathroom. He cleaned himself up, feeling a bit more at ease. "Is it too soon to say I love you?" she asked while washing her hands. "Not at all," he said with a smile, giving her a playful nudge. "I love you." On Friday, Anne met Penny Jones. She immediately liked the kind woman. As Anne talked about her marriage, she saw empathy in Penny's eyes. But when Anne showed Penny proof of Tommy's unfaithfulness, Penny's expression turned serious. "And you say this is his mother?" Penny asked, concerned. "Yes, that's right," Anne confirmed. "Ah, Anne, that's his mother? That's not okay even here," Penny replied. "What does that mean?" Anne asked, confused. "It means getting a divorce should be manageable," Penny assured her. Penny also reviewed Anne's bank statements and created a chart showing her deposits and withdrawals, as well as Tommy's, which appeared empty and unbalanced. We'll ask for his financial records, Penny promised. Richard Boudreau was the process server Penny trusted for tough situations. Teresa White was another option, but she was unavailable due to approaching motherhood. The cheerful man admired Tommy's Dodge Challenger and knocked on the door. After a moment, he knocked again. "Yeah?" Tommy grumbled, swinging the door open. "Hey man, that Challenger? I would love to have. Oh well, I know for sure that Bernie would never let me have one," Richard smiled. "Yeah, they are nice," Tommy agreed, stepping outside and scratching his stomach. "Hey, are you Tommy Huval?" "I'm Richard. You're Tommy, right?" Richard asked. Yeah, that's me," Tommy replied, trying to remember if he knew the smiling man. "And you have been served," Richard said, handing Tommy a manila envelope. "I've been what?" Tommy asked as Richard took a quick photo of him holding the envelope. "What is this about?" "I don't know. They just pay me to hand them out," Richard shrugged, glancing at a nearby car. "They don't tell me what's inside." Anne knew right away when her husband received the envelope. He flooded her with text messages, most of them hard to read. Then he left a long, confused voicemail. "Miss Anne, your phone is ringing," Gloria said. "Uh-huh, but we are busy, aren't we?" Anne replied. She smiled as she and Gloria mixed the batter for their dinner of waffles. At the stove, Kathleen and Jared were carefully stirring blueberries and sugar over medium heat. "Now, tell me again, why are waffles better than pancakes?" Jared asked. "Because, Daddy, waffles have those little holes you can fill with blueberry syrup. Pancakes? The syrup just runs off them," Anne said with a smile as she showed Gloria how to pour batter into the hot waffle iron. "Miss Anne, why are you not married anymore?" Gloria asked as Anne closed the lid. "Huh? Why do you say that?" Anne replied, surprised. "Your rings are gone," Gloria said, pointing to Anne's bare hand. "Wow, Daddy, she is one smart girl," Anne said. "Yeah, you have to be quick to outsmart my daughters," Jared chuckled. "Well, Gloria, Mr. Tommy said he wanted to kiss other girls, not me," Anne explained. "But if you are married, you are not supposed to kiss anyone else, just your husband," Gloria replied. "Exactly," Anne agreed. "So, do you kiss my daddy?" Gloria continued. "Maybe," Anne smiled. "Is that okay?" "Maybe," Gloria said, giggling. Kathleen needed just the right amount of blueberry syrup before she would eat her waffle, and her scrambled eggs could not touch her waffles, nor could the syrup mix with her eggs. "I like breakfast for dinner," Gloria said happily. "We should do this all the time." "I'm really tired," Jared sighed, worn out from arranging Kathleen's meal just right. Suddenly, a loud thunderstorm rolled in, shaking the windows with its noise. Both girls screamed in fright. They felt relieved when Daddy rushed into their room, hugging them tightly. Miss Anne joined them as they all cuddled into Daddy's bed. Gloria and Kathleen settled in the middle, with the two adults on either side. The thunderstorm continued on its way toward Baton Rouge. The four of them slept soundly until the morning sun gently peeked through the heavy curtains. "Daddy, I need to go to the bathroom," Kathleen stirred Jared awake. "I'll help you," Anne offered. "You can do that?" Kathleen inquired. "I'm pretty sure I can," Anne replied, trying to hold back laughter. They enjoyed a full weekend together, visiting the library and the park, having lunch at McDonald's, dinner at Chuck E. Cheese, attending church on Sunday, and then fishing in a small branch of the Atchafalaya River. Jared couldn't recall ever seeing a fish in that little stream, but it kept the girls happily occupied. After the girls had tired themselves from casting their lines, they went back home. Jared cooked some fish fillets and French fries for everyone. Miss Anne kissed each child 3 times because it would be 3 days before she could see them again. Then Jared drove them to their grandparents' house. As usual, Rochelle was quite bold in her compliments, and as always, Jared chose to ignore her. He kissed the girls goodbye and drove home. "Hey," Jared called out as he walked into the house. "Bedroom," Anne responded from the other room. "What about the bed?" Jared asked, making his way down the hall. "We've got 3 days to catch up," Anne said, lying comfortably on the bed. Jared nodded in agreement, feeling excited about being with her again. Anne playfully encouraged him, saying that she was ready for some fun together. Jared responded with a smile, enjoying the moment. They laughed and shared their feelings with each other, talking about their plans and dreams. "Can I ask you something?" Anne said, resting her head on his chest. "Sure," Jared replied, still catching his breath from their earlier activities. Do you ever think about having more kids? Anne asked. I have 2 already, Jared answered. No, I mean... Anne hesitated. Let me tell you something, Jared said seriously. Anne paused, sensing she might have touched a sensitive topic. She stopped playing with his arm. It might not be me who got their mom pregnant, Jared continued firmly, but I took care of their mother and now I'm responsible for them. Anne held her breath, aware that this was a pivotal moment in their conversation. She knew that his response could change everything between them. Get out of his house. His hand moved gently from her back to her shoulders, then to her hair. He ran his fingers through her short hair. It isn't just having a child that makes someone a dad, Jared said. She felt him kiss the top of her head. I would love to have more kids like Gloria and Kathleen, Jared said softly. They're everything to me. I'll do my best to give you a couple, but you'll need to talk to someone else about having more, Anne replied with a laugh. Oh, I don't know. What if we have twins or triplets? Jared joked. Jared Michael Broussard, I love you with all my heart, Anne said gently. The day they got the papers that declared Anne divorced, Jared took her to celebrate at Acapulco Grande. After their meal, he got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. The first people they told were Gloria and Kathleen. The 2 girls were so happy, especially when Anne promised they would be part of the ceremony. Rochelle managed to smile when Gloria announced she would be the ring bearer at Daddy's wedding, and she agreed that Kathleen would be a beautiful flower girl. I will spread petals for Miss Anne, Kathleen explained about the flower girl's job. And every petal will fall just right, Frances teased. Rochelle kept smiling as she helped the girls get ready for bed, checked their homework, and made sure they had everything for school the next day. She kept the smile as she read them a bedtime story. Then she sat at the kitchen table and opened a can of her father's beer. Well, you did this to yourself, her mother Connie said sharply when Rochelle cried about how unfair everything was. I know that, Mother. Thanks a lot, Rochelle replied in frustration. Hey, don't talk to your mom like that, Frances said firmly. She didn't make you go around like that. Later that evening, after drinking 5 cans of her father's beer, Rochelle sent Jared Broussard a text message. Please don't marry, was all it said. Jared read the message, but didn't feel the need to reply. He put his phone down and smiled as he heard Anne singing, not very well, along to a Miranda Lambert song while she took a bath. In the following weeks, Rochelle sent several messages to Jared, pleading for another chance. He didn't reply to any of them. He also ignored her when she tried to talk to him outside her parents' home, crying and upset. On the day of the wedding, Rochelle did something very drastic. Frances kicked open the bathroom door and pressed a towel to the injured woman's wound, while Connie called 911, tears in her eyes. Now remember, Kathleen told the staff at Happyland Daycare, my mommy's coming to get me today, okay? How do you think that child knows it's her mom's day to pick her up? One staff member asked another. I gave up trying to understand that child a long time ago, the other woman laughed. I just know, at 2:45, it's best to stay out of her way. The end. Author's note. I write these stories for fun and share them for your enjoyment. Thank you for reading. I especially appreciate those who take the time to leave comments and rate my stories. Yes, I read all comments. Many of you wanted to see what happened to the characters after the end of Yapping Dogs. To me, Yapping Dogs was a complete story, a snapshot of their lives. After Rochelle's difficult time, Jared and Anne were given custody of Gloria and Kathleen. On the day Gloria and Kathleen find out that Jared isn't their biological father, they will likely be emotional. They will hug him tightly and declare that he is their true father, no matter what the DNA says. After all, being a dad is about love, not biology. Now get some catfish fillets, some cornmeal, a little bit of Crystal's hot sauce, and have a good time. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.